Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of What If Naruto Was Neglected Heir of Uzumaki Clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe as it inspires me to make more such videos. So let's get started. Chapter 7. Uzumaki Compound. Training Ground. Minato has always wanted to train Naruto. It had been fun when they were doing it in the 2 months before things changed, he had enjoyed it, but since he made that choice things were a little different. Naruto only saw him for training and that was it. It was as if the redhead no longer lived in the Uzumaki compound. That incident had also changed Naruto in ways he couldn't even begin to imagine, but he knew that there was something different. Perhaps he had just been in denial to accept that killing someone had actually had an effect on Naruto. A part of him had truly hoped that there would be no change in his son, but he was seeing it now that it was all just wishful thinking. He was making it as if he was living in the ideal world where Kami granted all wishes made by the righteous and pure. But this was the shinobi world, a world where reality was quick to remind any fool who thought all dreams were possible with a cold slap to the face. Minato had expected things to change with Naruto since they denied him the chance to become a full-fledged shinobi. As things stood, Itachi was going to rise up in ranks, while gaining more experiences in the outside world. Naruto would remain a genin, and would not experience the outside until he was truly ready to face it. But it was for his own good. It was better to have a son who isn't fond of him than a dead son. At least this way, he was able to see his son every day, and he was able to protect him. Naruto needed to become stronger in order to face elemental nations. Minato would not stop giving everything he could to help his son grow stronger to protect himself. At this point he had no choice. Again, Minato said to Naruto. Naruto stared at his father for a few moments, he calmed his breathing, and took a stance with both his hands holding kunais. He looked at his father once again, the man looked calm and ready for anything. He had yet to take a defensive stance, just waiting for him to make a move. The redhead took off in the fastest speed he could muster. As his feet touched the ground in his run, Naruto held both kunais firmly. He charged straight on because that was he had been instructed to do. The moment both his feet landed a foot away from his father, the man jumped back slightly. Naruto bent down slightly before pushing chakra into his legs. He took off from the ground like a bullet, propelled further by the chakra. He put in his feet to increase his speed. He quickly reached his father just above the ground before the man could land in the ground. Minato showed no surprise, he merely smiled as Naruto swung his right hand towards his father's face with the kunai still on his right hand. The kunai whizzed past his father's forehead as the man leaned back slightly while still being carried by the momentum of his small jump. Naruto twisted around, while still in air as his father landed on the ground. As he faced his father once more, he threw the kunai on his left hand towards the man's forehead. Minato sidestepped the projectile easily enough and looked at Naruto calmly as he landed on the ground. Again, Minato said once more. Instead of allowing Naruto to attack, he went in straight at Naruto. The redhead showed his surprise when the Yondaime Hokage's left foot landed on the ground just away from him with his right in the air, being swung towards the side of his head on his left side. Naruto ducked under the kick by crouching down and tried to sweep his father off the ground. Minato reacted by stretching his right hand towards Naruto. Once his right hand touched Naruto's head, he used the red head as balance to lift his feet off the ground and flipped to the other side, landing behind Naruto. Naruto twisted around clockwise to face his father, and as he did, he found a kunai waiting for him. He raised his hands up in surrendering. The kunai Minato held was twisted on his fingers for a few seconds before he put it back on his pouch. The man folded his hands across chest and started speaking. You're becoming used to the weights. They don't seem to hold you back anymore. I have been using them for some time now, Naruto said. I'm usually doing physical exercises all the time to adapt to the weight. Once my muscles adjust to moving around with the weights, it becomes easy to learn walking around with them. Minato nodded. I won't increase your current weight. You will learn to move around with those weights. We have only been increasing the weights once you have adjusted, but now we have to move to the next step of deactivating the weights, and having you learn to control your speed. Naruto simply nodded. You need to learn to fight without depending too much on chakra to increase your speed, Naruto. Using chakra, as you did, you boost your jump consumes your chakra and it isn't necessary. You don't have an eternal supply of chakra. Minato said strongly. How many clones can you make at once? Depends on how much chakra I put into them. Since I wish for my clones to last for hours while using chakra, I cannot make too many. I usually limit them from 10 to 17 so that I can handle the influx of memories. Any more than that, and I start to feel the effects. I think I have grown used to these 17 that I no longer feel it when I use them. Perhaps my chakra is growing, Naruto said in thought. Either way, I realized that I do not have it in abundance. This is why I obsessed over perfect control so that I don't waste any was a priority. Minato nodded. Your reflexes are good. We still need to work on your speed and taijutsu when you are not using those chakra chains to complement it. Naruto frowned. That is my style of fighting. It works for me and I don't see any need to learn to fight without using them. I'll admit that your style is really impressive and unique. Your use of those chains is unique and I think that once you learn finer control over them and using them in conjunction with flames, you will create your own perfect defense, Minato said with a smile. Naruto's defense solution was truly remarkable. Minato had no doubt it would become the perfect defense. Those chakra chains weren't the ones to be broken by humans, and if the Kyuubi was unable to break them, what human could? Naruto counted on that strength to create a shield around himself that couldn't be penetrated by anything. He learned a simple barrier to help supplement the cover as well. But there was one problem with the defense. Once it was active, Naruto couldn't attack freely. Ninjutsu he couldn't do. So he was stuck with just Kenjutsu and Taijutsu. That meant he was reduced to just fighting someone at a close range. A long-range opponent wouldn't do him favors. But of course it didn't mean that the redhead would be at a disadvantage. If his opponent couldn't penetrate his defense, then he was safe. Defense isn't everything, Naruto. There will be a time when attacking is the only option, Minato said strongly. You don't have an ace in your pockets. As a shinobi you must always have an ace in case everything else fails. Your ability should be your ace. You don't have to use it carelessly in every battle. I only use the Hirashing when I have to. When I am facing someone who can't match my normal speed, I don't have to use it. Not every opponent you will face will be so strong that you need to use that ability. You have other abilities that you can learn to grow in. A normal taijutsu style that is complemented by speed, fluid movements and flexibility will still make you a tough opponent. Naruto listened carefully before he sighed. Fine, he said calmly. The Uchihas use their Sharingan when they think that an opponent cannot be beaten with these blind eyes. Minato laughed. You really, these eyes are blind, huh? Well, compared to the Sharingan and the Bakugan you can say that, the Yondaime Hokage said with a shake of his head. You're going to be surrounded by the Uchihas. How are you can to handle it when you're not very fond of their Dojutsu? With a smile Naruto said, but lacked the said smile. I don't actually hate the Sharingan. I just think it gives the Uchihas an unfair advantage, but then again, when has life been fair? When you take it by the horns, Minato said calmly. We are going to play a game of tag. I will be running and you will have to catch me. I will limit my movements around here. However, you have to take one step to get to me through the use of the body flicker technique. I must not see you running, and I will be teleporting to different locations. Minato took out his special kunai. Multiple cage kunai no jutsu. He did a hand seals and multiplied the kunai, and threw them around the training ground. I can only maintain these many for a few minutes, so we will have to be quick. I will be teleporting around the kunais, and when I flash to a kunai you have to come to me. Remember, I won't wait for you to come at me. This won't train your speed only. It will train your eyes to be able to follow movements. You won't have to depend on your eyes only, but your senses as well. And if you can predict which kunai I will teleport to, you can try that, the man added with a smile. He disappeared in a flash of yellow and appeared in a kunai that was embedded behind him. This will also make you learn the body flicker without the use of hand signs, and you will be quick at it as I am, Minato said. Now, let us start. He disappeared in a flash of yellow once again. 5 minutes later, Naruto was lying on the ground, on his back, breathing heavily. He was damn tired. The continuous use of chakra and rushing around added with the other work he had been doing before this game of tag had worn him out. Not to mention that he had a session with Fugaku during day, and with that man, it was always something taxing. Minato walked up to Naruto and sat down beside him. We will do this until you're able to tag me, the man said. It's not fair, Naruto said with his eyes closed. This is just high-speed movement and you're teleporting. I can't tag you like that. If you were also using the same technique, it would be fair, and I have weights on me. Don't complain, Minato said with a smile. I was giving you a few seconds before moving to another kunai. And I have to locate you and try to cover the distance between us in those seconds. It will take years before I can even come close. Next time let us give it 5 seconds at least. Fine, Minato said. I'm surprised though. Normally, you just try until you can't anymore before making complaints. I'm feeling a bit down to be doing the extreme, Naruto said calmly. And 2 sessions with 2 different people is proving to be too much for me. Besides, I know my limits now. Minato nodded. Naruto, he started in a quiet tone. Do you really not hate me? Your mother is worried, and so am I. I know it's not fair to you, but I just don't want anything to happen to you. I'd never forgive myself if I sent you out of the village and something happens to you. Naruto didn't respond. Minato looked at Naruto to see if the redhead was sleeping or just ignoring him. He smiled sadly when it appeared that the redhead was sleeping. He looked so peaceful when he was asleep and harmless. Even though Minato had a difficult time accepting it, Naruto had some frightening looks at sometimes. There were times one could catch him staring into the space ahead with a blank look on his face. Fugaku said the blank look was something that Naruto did a bit too often when at training. Then again, Itachi usually wore a stoic mask as well, and Fugaku as well. Those two wouldn't be worried, but Minato worried. Naruto had yet to actually talk to anyone fully about that incident. There were issues that he didn't talk about, and Minato really wished the boy could talk. If he had the heart, he would have sealed those memories the night it happened. But he knew it would only fix things temporarily, and over time those memories would resurface and Naruto would have to deal with it. Yoshino is going to come down here one day to complain about the use of the lights and the electricity demands, Kushina said, walking over to father and son with Karin held in her hands. It was night, and the entire training ground was lit up with bright lights that made it seem like it was clear day. The lights demanded much electricity. Yoshino wasn't the one who paid the bills, but she was the one who would complain. It was true that it was denting their pockets, but not that much for someone to complain about. You'd explain things to her so that she can see reason, Minato said as he stood up. He picked up Naruto and placed him on his back before looking at his wife. I think today I was a little rough on him. It is necessary, isn't it? Minato nodded. We might not have wished this kind of life for Naruto, but we can't change what has happened. We just have to work on hard to secure the future, Minato smiled. And I'm sure Naruto would want to be strong so that he can protect his younger sister. At least one of them has to enjoy a normal life. Yes, Kushina said with a nod. Karin-chan will have to reach at least Genin before returning to the clan to handle matters. Naruto can play a game of politics with other had clans, but his ignorance and lack of interest in these matters means that Karin will have to step in to take in some matters. Naruto does have the perfect poker face, but he focuses more on being shinobi. He won't have too much time to handle clan business, Minato smiled. On the bright side of things, it will save Karin from the cruel world of the shinobi world. Too much is placed on Naruto's shoulders, though, Kushina said with a sad look on her face. He had looked so happy that day. No one thought that it would change like that just after 2 days. It has happened, Minato said firmly. We just have to be parents to our children. We cannot make the same mistake twice. The following day, Hokage Monument. It was strange that he didn't feel at least happy about holding a headband on his hand. The kids at the academy would have been jumping up and down in joy at holding this metal plate that showed loyalty and allegiance, but Naruto felt indifferent just holding it. As expected, he had passed the graduation exam along with Itachi, and they had been given their headbands to prove that they had become shinobis of Konoha. Itachi could smile because he would start working hard to protect Konoha. That has been his dream along with Shizui. The Uchiha would be ecstatic inwardly, of course. Wearing a headband was every aspiring shinobi's dream, and for Itachi it had become a reality. But Naruto wasn't going anywhere. He was going to remain stuck in the village handling less dangerous things while Itachi enjoyed the life of a shinobi. Are you that displeased with what life has brought before you? Itachi asked, seeing the look on Naruto's face. Isn't it obvious? Naruto said in a quiet tone. My life has been forced to take turns because of situations I had no control over. At one point, I even became religious and started praying, but that changed nothing. So many things happened that I cannot control, and most are not working in my favor. He was beginning to think that perhaps that God he prayed to had heard him, but had not responded, and had become infuriated with him because he had given him the middle finger. He couldn't be faulted for doing it though. The damn God hadn't been responding to his prayers, and he was still a kid. Weren't kids supposed to get all their wishes come true? But for him there has been nothing like that. Since that day, it seems that nothing pleasant was going to happen. It was even outrageous when he compared the current life to the previous life, when he got all he wanted and lived in joy. There were things such as fate that were brought into the conversation. Naruto cursed such a thing. He wouldn't allow some invisible force to dictate the course of his life. He would find for his freedom and grab it with both his hands, and never let go. That was the dream at least. This is life, Naruto, Itachi said in a firm tone. Instead of fighting this reality, you should embrace it, and try to twist it to your liking. Some things we cannot change, but we can make the best of some situations to suit ourselves. Naruto turned to look at Itachi, who already had his forehead protector wrapped around his forehead. Make the best out of it, huh? Naruto wasn't even sure what the Uchiha meant by that. He wasn't going to ask nevertheless. It was something that needed to be investigated. He would search for the answers later on. Besides, he had Izumi. She was more knowledgeable in life than he was, and she had been taught so many things. Some of which he has taught him, and he had ignored. It was ironic and somewhat of a slap in the face that the things he had ignored back then were needed, because they could help him. He had said ignorance was bliss, but it wasn't bliss now. He needed to know in order to survive. The Sannin had been right. Some situations are handled better because of the knowledge we have. When we know nothing, we become clueless and overwhelmed by the mountains we face. Harsh lessons, it was turning out to be. If he had known it would be like this, then he would have learned. Then again, no one really knows the future. Harsh lessons again. There was a saying that people learn the best with experiences. He was learning with his experiences all right. It was difficult, but he was learning. Naruto focused on Itachi once more as the Uchiha explained what he meant. Instead of hating and fighting this position you're in, you should look at the positives. I might be blind because I haven't been seeing any positives, Naruto said, his eyes no longer at Itachi but at the village below. That is because you have a lot to deal with at the moment, Itachi said. When we are burdened, we sometimes fail to see the truth even if it is before us. It is especially worse for you because you often choose to turn a blind eye on a lot of things that occur around you. Apparently, Naruto said. Will you enlighten this blind fool, Itachi? The Uchiha furrowed his brows at that. That was the first time he ever heard Naruto refer himself to such, and the weird thing was that he had smiled when he said that. Itachi shook his head. He shouldn't read too much into the masks Naruto had on his face. The truth was that nobody actually knew what Naruto was thinking inside his head. He always hid his thoughts, and at times what he was saying, and what his face was saying could be two different things. The dilemma was which one to pick. Itachi had learned to just take Naruto's words. The redhead didn't do too much sarcasm. The first and most important thing is that you get to live. Because of troubles outside the increased load of missions being done by Anbu, your father can't have a squad of Anbu protecting you at all times if you want to go outside the village. Even so, there is no doubt that you can be fully protected. He doesn't want to risk his man when the situation can be avoided. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment. My life, huh? Was there anything more important than being alive? If he was dead, he was dead. He would cease to exist in this world, and his sister would never grow to know him. That would be disappointing. To be alive means you can live to fight another day, Itachi said strongly. You have been given a chance to train and become strong while still confined in this village. It doesn't mean you won't become strong, because you have been restricted. You have been growing strong without even being outside the village. My development isn't an issue. As ignorant as I am, I know that my development will not be stunted by this, Naruto said in a calm tone. I am receiving training from your father and my father. It is helping me become stronger. I feel we won't get much time to train together at day though. We will make time, Itachi said strongly. Well, that is if our duties do not get in the way, the Uchiha added, knowing full well that once he entered into the shinobi world, he would be busy. If not doing missions, he would be training. One more thing is that you will get to do missions with the police force. The villagers will be seeing you every day. They will be seeing Uzumaki Naruto working hard to keep the peace in the streets. What are you getting at? You want to be great, isn't it? Naruto nodded firmly. This is your start. Be great in the military police force, and the villagers will acknowledge you. They will acknowledge Uzumaki Naruto. This will be your first time. Once you leave the streets, you will have the foundation, and when you disappear off to missions, the villagers will be asking, where is Uzumaki Naruto? After Itachi finished speaking, Naruto seemed to think for a moment before he burst out laughing. Although the hollow laugh had hit Itachi, the Uchiha didn't a reaction to it. Once Naruto was calm, he turned to face Itachi once again, smiling and his eyes closed. You're rather good at this manipulation game, Itachi. Not the intention, but I'm just trying to have you see the bright side of things. What I have said is the truth. There are no lies, and it all depends on you whether you take it or not. Either way, your situation will not change, Itachi responded stoically. Naruto's eyes partially opened as he stared at Itachi for a few moments. Next year you will be assigned to a team when others graduate, and after that, you will grow as a shinobi. From Genin it will be Chunin, then Jonin. What then? When I am eligible, I am thinking of joining the Anbu, Itachi said. Their motto of protecting the village from the shadows without receiving praise for it interests me. And my father said it would be best if I go that way. I see, Naruto said. Looks like I will be in your shadow for a while, the redhead said. Even after the Chunin exams come, after some time, my father will not allow me to enter, because if I enter and gain promotion, he will be forced to release me, and since the exams are open to the elemental nations, it will reveal my skills to everyone. That will be a danger, Itachi said. I imagine it would represent a major threat if other nations start thinking that there will be another yellow flash. You understand what that jutsu makes your father, right? Imagine if you also had it in your arsenal. One Hirashing is already one flea on sight, a second one would be a disaster. Your father annihilated an army of 1,000 by himself using the jutsu. When we add you into the scenario, no army will be safe. They will just have to send you two, and armies will retreat. Other nations cannot bear that thought. They will try by all means to stop it from happening. It would be better for them to start a war they can win than allow another yellow flash to rise. People are willing to do anything. As you are now, you cannot do much. This is why you must become stronger in order to stand by your father to protect what must be protected. Naruto fully opened his eyes before speaking. I didn't ask you to open a whole lot of scriptures, he said in a flat tone. But I do see your point. I'm glad you do, Itachi said. Yet it still bothers me that I will have to wait. Naruto said calmly. I'm going home to do some reading. When are we supposed to meet? In 3 hours. 16H00, Itachi said. Naruto nodded, and waved his left hand. I will see you then, he said, walking away. Itachi couldn't help but frown slightly as Naruto walked away from the monument. Since the incident, Naruto has really been a bit too focused on his training more than anything. He didn't engage in those kind of talks he normally did with Shizui. It wasn't to say that the morals the redhead had gained were now a memory. It was just that priorities had changed once again. Then again, the redhead had said he was selfish. It shouldn't really surprise him. The young ones grow a bit too quickly these days, Jiraiya said as he walked up to Itachi. Seeing the Uchiha became somewhat guarded, the Sannin merely smiled. Have no fears, he said, waving his right hand. The Sannin looked at Uchiha careful, taking in every feature of the black-haired. Well, there was no doubt that he was Fugaku's son, if that look was anything to go by. Just looking at the boy's eyes, Jiraiya could tell a few things. That didn't mean that he could actually read the Uchiha. The boy had a blank look on his face, it seemed to come with most Uchiha's as a package. How long have you been watching, Jiraiya-sama? Itachi asked the man as his eyes looked back at the village. Oh, what makes you think that I have been watching you too? Jiraiya asked, his tone filled with mild curiosity. It isn't a coincidence that you chose to appear just after Naruto left, the Uchiha stated calmly. You were watching us. Perhaps Naruto was the interest. You're the one who trained his father, one would assume you take interest in him as well. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow as Itachi spoke. He shook his head, smiling slightly. I am interested in you as well. The old man speaks highly of you. Admittedly more than he does of Naruto. Skills aside, he says you have a great personality and nobody actually knows what goes on in Naruto's head these days. Itachi was not surprised by that. The Sandaime has praised both him and Shizui regularly while expressing his concern over Naruto's attitude. The old man has given them a mission to shed some light into Naruto's life. Not that the redhead was clouded in darkness, but he didn't see things in the way that they did, which was a problem. Nothing evil is going inside his head, Itachi said of Naruto. I have no doubt about that. Naruto may be indifferent towards a lot of things, but he isn't the type to be plotting things. In what he has gone through, he has not had any dark thoughts that can make me fear for anything. I have listened to him speak, and watched his movements. Well, his sanity was something that one had to worry about. But the streets would teach Naruto some valuable lessons about life and dealing with people, as well as learning some kindness. He would have to be kind to the villagers when doing his job. Civilian life can be said as peaceful. Perhaps the job would give him some peace of heart and mind. His training would still be going on, and he has already killed. There won't be much that he will be missing. But that doesn't mean is a good person, Jiraiya pointed out. Itachi shook his head. Perhaps my father and I are the ones who understand him better than anyone, Itachi said. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at that. What do you mean by that? When Naruto speaks of his training, he doesn't say months, but he says years. This is because of the use of his clones. Technically, it has been months, but the experience has been years. Every day Naruto's mind has to process information from at least 10 clones. Given his age, it is a little too much if he is doing it every day. There is a lot in his mind. It's logical to conclude that as he sorts the memories of his clones inside his head that has influenced his life as well. He deals with things inside his rather than expressing them. That is a unique way to look into things, Jiraiya said in thought. Uzumaki compound. Naruto looked up from the scroll he was reading as a man walked up to him, a stranger in the Uzumaki compound. It was a rare sight to see. Naruto couldn't remember the last time he saw someone here unless they were a clan head. The Sandaime Hokage wasn't even a frequent visitor to the clan. The old man came to use the library though. Of course not every section was available to him, especially the ones that were written by the Uzumaki clan secrets. Since it was still day and he needed to sharpen his skills in Fuinjutsu, He was in the training ground, going through some notes he had done with the help of Izumi. She was more experienced in the sealing department than him, and it was best to get some training done. That old hag had informed him that learning Fuinjutsu was a requirement for him to become head clan. Even if he does become Jonin without the required skills, he wouldn't become the leader of the Uzumaki clan unless he was 18 years old. Jiraiya's eyes were focused on the marks that had stretched out around Naruto. It was complex stuff. The Toad Sage was curious about the markings. They had the unique signature of Uzumaki in them. Well, the redheads were the best when it came to seals anyway. He hadn't known that the redhead before him had come this far when it came to seals. What is this? Jiraiya asked, kneeling down to look at the marks on the ground carefully. Work in progress, Naruto said, tilting his head to the side. Who are you? He asked in a curious tone. The Sannin blinked when Naruto asked that. The redhead seemed rather serious about his question. If Jiraiya didn't know about the boy's ignorance, he would have thought that the blonde was pulling one on him. Yet, Jiraiya wasn't disappointed. He stood up and grinned before going through his poses as he introduced himself. I am the legendary Toad Sage, the man started proudly, Jiraiya-sama. Naruto's eyes were not on the man's form. He had gone back to his scroll. He had no interest in seeing the man doing his ridiculous poses. Interesting, the redhead said calmly. You like my pose? Naruto shook his head. The interesting past was that people were willing to believe him when he said that he didn't know something. He wasn't going to tell the man that. It was his discovery, and he was going to keep it to himself. I didn't see it, the redhead said, almost killing Jiraiya. When you stood up, I went back to my work. I actually know you. I'm not that ignorant that I wouldn't know the man who trained my father. He also speaks of you. The image is one that had eluded me, Naruto stated, the focus of his eyes on the scroll. I would have been shocked if you didn't know anything about me. That would have meant that Minato doesn't talk about me, the Sannin said. Or maybe he does and I just ignore that kind of talk, Naruto offered another alternative. I don't know where my mother is, and my father is at the Hokage Tower. Jiraiya blinked before shaking his head when he realized where the redhead was going. What makes you think I came here for them? Naruto looked up at the Sannin for a few moments, with his head tilted to the side. You're here for me then? He said, smiling. I'm all ears, Jiraiya-sama. Finally, a kid who knows to respect his elders, the Toad Sage said happily. What are you working on? Jiraiya asked, his eyes going back to the markings around Naruto. Naruto's smile widened slightly. It's a secret, he said. Jiraiya frowned. Come on, I won't tell anyone. Besides, I recognize the gravity seal markings on the ground around here. Are you trying to create a large-scale gravity seal? Naruto looked on for a few moments thinking. Ah, so the word about you being a seal master is not exaggerated, the redhead said calmly. It is something like that, but not exactly. What is it exactly? I'm creating my field. There is a seal that enhances gravity, slowly absorbs chakra, and heightens my sensing abilities. Jiraiya appeared to think for a moment before grinning. Genius, he said. How did you come to think of something like that? The perfect defense, the weight gravity seals, my lack of sharp sensing abilities, and the Sharingan's ability to predict moves, the redhead stated calmly. At the last word, Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. You know about that. So, I'm guessing you have come across those eyes and have been reading about them. I was told the Nidaime Hokage had done a thorough research into those eyes. You're using your library. Use everything at your disposal to be better, Naruto said. That is the only useful thing I learned from the academy teacher. Jiraiya just nodded, his focus went back to the seal. The perfect defense, huh? How is this going to work? This is not the defense, Naruto said. This just complements it. When I said a field, I meant it literally. I am going to create a field that slows down the opponent's movements, slowly absorbs their chakra so that they don't notice it. Also, the sensing part will be that it will be my field of vision. I can feel anything that happens. At least that is the plan. What is the perfect defense? Naruto merely smiled at the Sannin. Something I'm perfecting, he said without going into detail. Jiraiya frowned, but he didn't try to force the issue. Something like this can't be perfect. Once the opponent notices this, they won't try to get closer to you. They will try long-range attacks, and I'm guessing this will have a time limit, and since it is applied to the ground, you won't be able to move around. This means your own movements will be limited. The Sannin paused for a moment. I'm impressed that someone your age was able to create something like this though. Naruto shook his head. I don't take the credit for this, he said. I didn't create this alone. I came up with the idea and Izumi did the formulas. I'm just going through the finishing touches and practical application. That is still impressive for someone your age, Jiraiya said firmly. The ability to create seals comes with the imagination to invent something and the understanding of the art. The fact that you're able to understand this means that you're adept to the tricks behind Fuinjutsu, but of course understanding doesn't necessarily mean the ability to create. Knowledge and practical skills are two different things. Apparently Naruto said. Then, I mean no offense, but I'm unable to work with you here, and I have to be out of here in an hour. I'm kind of obsessive about meeting my targets, and everything runs on schedule. I'd rather not ruin it when there is chance for me not to. Jiraiya stared at Naruto for a few moments before he settled down. I'm here about your first kill and Minato's decision not to let you leave the village until you decides otherwise. Old matters, Naruto said, with a wave of his right hand. I have talked about the second matter a bit too much, and after that talk with Itachi, talking about it again will be nothing more than an annoyance. What about the first matter? You haven't really been talking to someone about it, and your father is worried. That is because there is nothing to talk about. My father just worries too much, Naruto said calmly. There are no problems. I did what I did, and that's it. If it troubles me, I will go ask about. For now, it doesn't because I have a good handle on what is going on in my head. After saying that, Naruto went back to his scroll. He needed to get this done in time. Jiraiya sighed. This didn't go in the way he wanted it to go, but at least he was able to get a look at the redhead. I have an offer that will smooth things out. Naruto didn't say anything nor did he even look up to the Sannin. If you want to go out and see the outside of the village, I will be more than willing to do it with you. I'm a Sannin, no one will be willing to attack me head-on. My presence solves the problem of protection. Naruto looked up at the Sannin with a smile. That is an interesting offer, the redhead said. Why are you offering it? It would certainly please me, but what about you? Jiraiya merely smiled, a bit sheepishly. Since I'm your godfather, I thought it would be nice if I ease up things for you. Besides that, you are Minato's son. Minato was my brightest pupil. Naruto looked at the Sannin for a second or two, and returned to his work once again. Jiraiya sighed, but he didn't leave. He settled down and summoned a bottle of sake. He would need something to drink while observing the redhead. It was a bit too early and Kushina would kill him if she saw him drinking in front of her son, but he was ignoring him. What other choice did he have? Oh, Jiraiya said to get Naruto's attention, but the redhead didn't look up to him. There is actually something that brought me here, the Toad Sage said. Naruto's eyes looked up to the man for a moment before he looked down on his work once again. The message was clear. You do know about summons, right? I hold the Toad summoning contract. Your father has signed it as well. I'd like you to sign it as well. Once you're ready, it will give you the ability to summon toads to aid you in the battlefield, Jiraiya explained smiling. You'd be like the third-generation toad contract holder. Not interested, Naruto said. There is no need for me to sign the contract. My father, and you already have it, and I don't intend to follow your line, Jiraiya-sama. I wish to follow my own path. If you come back tomorrow my answer will still be no now, can you please allow me to get back to my work? The redhead asked a bit too nicely. Uchiha compound. Mother, Naruto said to his mother as he walked past the gates of the compound. He had not been expecting to come across the woman. He knew she was friends with the other woman, but he had never come across her at the compound despite his regular visits. Kushina smiled when she saw Naruto going off to training. Naruto nodded. Good thing I came across you. Since I don't have training with father today, I won't return home today. I will stay here for the night, the redhead said to his mother. Kushina frowned. This wasn't the first time that Naruto was doing something like this, and it didn't make her happy. She wanted her son to sleep at the bed she bought for him, but she couldn't really force him to come back. Naruto could be stubborn when he wanted to be, and she didn't want to do anything that would drive him away. Seeing Kushina's frown, Mikoto gave the Uzumaki a gentle squeeze on her right shoulder and smiled. Don't worry, I will take good care of him, the Uchiha said calmly. Now go on, they are waiting for you. Naruto smiled. Thank you, he said before walking away, hands inside his pocket. Even though he was told the others were already waiting for him, the redhead didn't run, he walked away in a leisurely pace. Kushina turned around, watching her son walk away, she was still frowning. Mikoto's words had done nothing to comfort her. Even if the woman had not said anything, Kushina would have known that she would make sure that Naruto was okay. That was not the problem though. The thing is that she wanted to be the one to take care of her son. Minato was the one who got to spend time with their son, but what about her? Does it bother you? Admittedly, Kushina said with a nod. Ever since the incident, I have not been able to connect with him. It has seemed like there is something in between and I can't really see him. Even though he smiles, sometimes it just feels empty. I understand, Mikoto said with a sad smile. I will try talking to him tonight. He and I have a special connection. Kushina raised an eyebrow at this. What do you mean special connection? She demanded suspiciously. She had worried that Naruto would be driven into the hands of the Uchihas with all that they were offering him. It was a bit okay with Minato because he had the time with Naruto when both were training, but not for her. She wouldn't wish for anyone to replace her as Naruto's mother. Not even if that person was her friend. Mikoto merely laughed. I have seen his real smile, she said smiling. He is sweet when you talk to him about what he wants to talk about. He is kind of selfish that way. I wasn't aware that you were getting familiar with my son, Kushina said. Mikoto shrugged a bit indifferently. I can't say I have been growing familiar with him. Sometimes he comes in for his sessions, he has to wait for both Fugaku and Itachi. I normally keep him company. I see, Kushina said. Our sons are growing too fast, aren't they? Mikoto nodded in agreement. But that is because both have a weight on their shoulders and without this training, they won't be able to withstand what is about to come. The situation inside the village and outside doesn't suit both clans, for that both must work in order for things to change. Change, huh? Kushina said in thought. I hope none of my children or grandchildren are forced to become Jinchurikis. If it wasn't really necessary, I would rather allow the Kyubi to be out of our lives. It was a burden to carry out the Bajoa, and she didn't want anyone else to carry it. She had lived through it all holding it, but it would be different with the third Jinchuriki if they do end up choosing one. The problem was that since the Kyubi went on a rampage, the villagers don't just fear it, they hated it as well. Anyone who was known to be the holder of the beast would be targeted as well. Because the villagers didn't know who the beast was sealed into, and if it was even sealed into someone again, they targeted their hatred towards the clan. It was good that they'd made the choice to hide the container of the Bajor just in case something like this happened. Nobody had to know unless there was an emergency. That had been forcefully agreed upon by the clan heads. Things will change, Kushina. They will, Mikoto said confidently, and a smile for reassurance. With Naruto. When Naruto walked into the training ground behind Fugaku's house, he found Itachi already working his father. It was possibly the first time that Naruto walked into the training ground, and found both father and son training. He hadn't been late for the agreed upon time. The two had just decided to start without, not that Naruto was bothered by it. A surprising thing his eyes witnessed were the Uchihas watching in the sidelines as Itachi sparred with his father. Naruto noted that the younger Uchiha had his Sharingan awakened. Thinking of the Dojutsu made Naruto frown. There had been a question that he had neglected to ask Itachi. It had to do with the Uchiha's Sharingan. According to the notes from Tobirama, to awaken the Sharingan, the Uchiha had to experience some emotional crap. Perhaps his mind was being corrupted by the thought that the second Hokage had in his mind. Naruto got the feeling that the man didn't really like the Uchihas at all. It was just a feeling, and Naruto didn't try to understand it, because those were the Nadame's thoughts, not his. Uzumaki Naruto had his own thoughts about the Uchihas. That is enough, Fugaku said to Itachi, bringing their training to a halt. The Uchiha clan head looked towards Naruto and motioned for the redhead to come closer. Naruto walked towards the two slowly, and turned his eyes into the blood-red eyes that were watching him like a hawk. Naruto really didn't feel comfortable with those eyes watching his every step. He felt exposed and naked before those eyes. It wasn't as horrible and dreadful as the feeling he got when he was looking at the Byakugan. That gave him a thought. He would have seal that placed on the Uzumaki compound's wall on him. The seal was made to block both the Dojutsu's ability to see through chakra. He would need to have that seal placed on his body so that he could feel confident and comfortable. Naruto looked at Fugaku and spoke. I feel I'm being judged by those eyes looking at me, he said to the clan head. Why were they even here in the first place? He liked to keep his training secret and his skills in secret as well. They would be exposed one day, he knew, but with those eyes watching him, he wouldn't feel comfortable enough to give his all in training. Just the two of them watching him was enough. Shizui was not a problem as well. He did train with the lively Uchiha after all. You're not far off, Fugaku said to Naruto. Not everyone is happy to see me spending time training you along with Itachi. Your father's request has also made things complicated, and some members of the clan want to see if you're worth the effort. If there was any good time to smile even when those eyes were judging him, this was the good time. Naruto let loose of a grin when those words fully registered in his head. What made him smile was not the thought of showing off, but the thought of someone thinking that he was not worth something, that he was not worth the trouble Fugaku went through to get him into shape. Uzumaki Naruto was worth something. My worth, huh? Naruto said, smiling, eyes closed. It was by no means a happy smile, just an empty smile. I really dislike when someone questions the value of my existence, but that is just another luggage that has to be dealt with in this world. There are prices you must pay for some things. Not everything is free after all. Itachi just looked on with an expressionless look on his face. A part of him smiled hearing Naruto talk like that. It wasn't an easy task getting the redhead to look at life in all angles, but he was doing it, and Naruto was beginning to talk as he should. That made Itachi feel proud knowing that the redhead was growing. I'm glad you understand, Fugaku said calmly. Don't disappoint me, the Uchiha head said before he inclined for the three to come. He is all yours. The Uchiha said to the three who had their eyes on Naruto, examining every inch of his body. While they were doing that, Naruto looked at Itachi. Where is Shizui? Itachi inwardly shook his head before responding. He is on a mission, but should be back tomorrow, or any day in the next 3 days. I see, Naruto said before turning to face the three Uchihas. One of them had stepped up and was standing in front of him, looking at him with an expressionless mask that most Uchiha wore. When faced with that, Naruto smiled, eyes partially closed. Uzumaki Naruto. The redhead said with a small bow of his head. Both Fugaku and Itachi looked at each other and shook their heads. The former coupled it with a snort. If he was up for sarcasm, he would have allowed one to slip through his lips at Naruto's actions. Uchiha Inabi, the man introduced himself to Naruto. I want to test you and see if you are as good as Fugaku-sama says you are. We don't allow outsiders in our clan, but in some cases we may take some exemptions. However, you must prove to be worth the trouble. If not, you won't be accepted into Konoha's military police force. Naruto smiled wide and slightly as he opened his eyes, halfway. Really? He said calmly. There is one mandatory technique you must be able to execute. This is a first stage. If you cannot pass through it, then there will be no reason to go to the next, the Uchiha stated. Show me the Uchiha's signature jutsu. Naruto did 2 hand seals and held his hand around his mouth, creating an O. It was all done in a leisurely pace, and the man before him had raised an eyebrow when Naruto only did 2 hand seals. Fire style, great fireball no jutsu. Inabi sped away when his Sharingan saw Naruto throwing his jutsu towards him. The redhead hadn't even bothered turning to the other side when executing the jutsu. He released it with the man in front of him. Inabi looked from the side as Naruto's crimson flames heated up the area. A minute of this, and he would be sweating. The flames were extremely hot that would have been incinerated in seconds. The Uchiha looked back at Naruto. He wanted to shoot the redhead a death glare for doing something so dangerous, but he found the boy smiling an unnerving smile. Inabi looked back to Fugaku, who just looked amused. He frowned for a moment before looking back at Naruto. Why did you do that? You wanted to see the jutsu, and I wanted to see if the Sharingan is as great as I hear. That was shooting 2 birds with 1 stone. I had the utmost confidence that you would dodge it, the redhead said easily enough. If I hadn't dodged it? Naruto's eyes turned sharp as his smile stretched once again. Fugaku intervened before Naruto could say what he thought the redhead was going to say. It was something careless that would no doubt infuriate Inari. Move on to the next step. We have training to do after you leave, Fugaku said sternly. Inabi composed himself. He really didn't want the redhead to take part in anything, but he had made a deal with Fugaku, and he would have to go through it. I was told that you were creating the perfect defense. Show it to me and then I will willingly accept you into the military police force. If you perform, I will even convince the others to treat you fairly. I will hold you for that, Naruto said, tilting his head to the side. He held his hands together and a chain burst out before wrapping itself around Naruto's body. 7 more were formed, and they all lined up around Naruto, forming like pillars. Naruto snapped his fingers, and the chakra chains burst with flames. It's not complete, not even imperfect. This is why I'm willing to show it to you. These flames will burn you if you touch them, Inabi-san. Be sure to avoid them. Inabi frowned. As far as he knew, those chains were unbreakable. So hitting them with all he got would just be a waste for him and his energy. If the redhead was telling the truth, then he would have to find a way past those chains, all 7 of them. It was unlikely because those chains seemed to be freely movable. Even if he does get past the chains, there was still another one around Naruto, and the last one was used in conjunction with a barrier. Not wanting to work so hard against a kid, Inabi swallowed his pride and looked at Fugaku. He is as you say, he looked back at Naruto. Welcome to the military police force. Meet me at the top of the village's hospital at 9 p.m. along with Itachi. The man disappeared after saying those words. The other 2 followed him. Fugaku looked at Naruto with a small smile. Your ability to mask your emotions has even fooled the Sharingan, the man said. What if he had attacked? That would have been a problem. Naruto said, with a smile. Fugaku shook his head. Work hard to perfect that technique of yours. You will need it soon, the man said. You will do patrols from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. I advise you not do anything taxing as you will both need your energy later on. Itachi waited for his father to leave before he spoke. Be careful with how you act around other Uchihas. Not all are smart enough to swallow their prides, and you really don't want to wound an Uchiha's pride. You will not be liked. Shouldn't you be saying we are a very prideful clan? Naruto asked. I'm an Uchiha, but I know what is important just as my father and Shizui does. Inabi-san isn't so bad, just a little too serious, Itachi responded calmly. Did Jiraiya-sama come to speak with you? By all means, given his talk with the Sannin, Itachi had assumed that the man would go to Naruto after talking to him. It wasn't difficult to predict the main purpose of the talk. Naruto's responses were not that hard to figure out as well. The redhead could be simple at times, but that didn't mean that he didn't have his moments. He did, Naruto said in a quiet tone. I wonder why people are all over my issue. You, Fugaku, and Shizui have not bombarded me with worries and 21 questions. That has made me a bit comfortable. but other people cannot stop with the damn questions. You have to understand that they are worried, Itachi said calmly. Trance was expected, but to suddenly come out of it with a smile after killing someone and the fact that you don't even talk about the ordeal to those who are your family must really worry them. I had a talk with Shizui when he violated my peacetime and privacy, Naruto stated in a firm tone. And I had another talk with the Sannin. The old man explained things clearly and I understood them. What more is needed? It is not whether you understand it or not. Clearly you have understood it, but the question is, how has it affected you personally? Killing can change people from good to bad, it can corrupt the pure and even wipe out the kindness on one's heart, especially for people our age. Nothing much has changed in me, Naruto said as his lips turned upside down. I will admit that things have become a little cold in here. The redhead added, the palm of his right hand on his chest. Nothing much, but even the slightest tilt in a person's character can cause the biggest changes. The thing is that you don't talk to people about it, and so people don't know what is going on inside your heart. I have Shizui when I want to talk to someone, but although I can say we are friends, you don't much share your problems or burdens with other people. Itachi paused for a moment before adding. Sharing does help people understand each other. When you share your problems, we are able to grow closer and will each other carry our burdens. Always the big talker, Naruto said with a shake of his head. I like small things that are easy to understand. There is so much information in my mind that I would rather avoid complex things. But I do understand what you're saying. The redhead said. There is still time before we have duties with the military police. What shall we do to kill time? The following morning. It has been some time since Naruto actually spoke to the old hag that was before him. Well, that wasn't exactly true. What he meant was that the times they spoke it was only greetings and both would get their way minding their own business. Yoshino hadn't tried being a mountain before him. She had been a good Oba-san and Naruto liked the peace that was brought without her nagging. Yoshino threw 2 scrolls at Naruto. The redhead caught then and looked at the old woman curiously. He didn't have to ask anything, his look said enough. That stupid girl told me you were looking into gravity seals and barriers. Those 2 scrolls should help you deal with that, Yoshino said, looking stern-faced. By the time your father allows you to leave the village, you should be able to either understand thoroughly a sealing technique used for bourgeois who must have invented a seal of your own. It must not be worthless. If you cannot tick the boxes, the clan will forbid you from leaving. Naruto frowned. That wasn't an impossible task, but he hated the fact that he couldn't control everything about his life. There was no freedom. His damn life was being controlled by the terms that were placed before him. I will see that I don't disappoint, Naruto said calmly. Yoshino didn't question the lack of a smile from Naruto. That is what is expected of you, the old woman said before turning away from Naruto. After a minute, Izumi walked in the room with a smile. Nothing too troublesome this time, I hope, she said. Naruto turned to look at the teen. He gave her a long stare that made her feel uncomfortable. I will be earning a salary from the military police, and with the funds I currently have we can afford a place outside the compound. The restrictions here are starting to get to me. I will need a place of my own that I will use when I need some freedom and peace. Izumi frowned. You need to speak to your parents first. What about Karin-chan? I never said anything about leaving the compound. I said I needed to find a place that will be like my hiding place. My dear sister is not forgotten, and I need the library of this compound. I will still be making regular visits. Uchiha compound. Itachi was in the training ground when Shizui walked up to him looking a bit worn out. The younger Uchiha assumed his friend had just returned from his mission. Tough mission? Itachi asked as Shizui slumped on the ground beside him. Shizui nodded. Yay, he said. Lost a teammate yesterday. The power of my eyes isn't unknown, and it seems that some people will do anything to get their hands on them. I am facing threats even in the village. Itachi's expression turned serious. Danzo? Shizui nodded. He has been making moves, but I have not told your father yet. I know if I do, he will be more than ready to wage war against the War Hawk. He will be within his rights to do so, but you understand that if we allow something like that to happen, there will be trouble, right? Itachi nodded. Danzo will not sit back and allow father to attack him. This village will be caught in the crossfire and a civil war may just occur. That is the less likely scenario, but it is possible. Danzo will fight and father will fight. The Hokage will have to pick sides. He will pick our side, and even if we manage to end things quickly, the villagers will feel the effects and will blame us for causing trouble when they were enjoying their peace, Shizui explained, looking up into the sky. The clan cannot have that. This is why I will deal with this on my own. I cannot allow the clan to be dragged into this. I am just one person. This village and the clan are worth more than that. Are you sure? Shizui nodded. I will need your help, but if something happens, I don't have to worry about anything because I know you are still in this village. You can never doubt yourself, Itachi. There will be challenging times ahead, and we cannot be certain that I will be there to help you out. For this reason, you must help Naruto. Speaking of the redhead, how far are you? Itachi appeared to think for a few moments before he responded. Shizui, have you seen Naruto's eyes? Shizui looked up at Itachi trying to figure out what the younger Uchiha meant by that. I suspect there is a deeper meaning to that question, he said. Good question. I cannot say I have. Everyone who knows Naruto knows his poker face, but people have not seen his eyes. The eyes say a lot about a person. But Naruto hides what is in his eyes. He always closes them. He is looking at you. What is he hiding? Shizui pondered on the thought for a few moments before shaking his head. Who knows? But I guess it is something that we will eventually see. Shizui paused as he thought of something. You said people. Have you seen them? Itachi nodded. For a second though, he said. They are frighteningly cold, but that doesn't mean that there is no kindness in him. I have seen him around my mother and his family. I truly believe that working with lively people will grow that kindness. Iwagakure. Sandaime Tsukikage's office. Fool. Onoki roared after reading the letter he got from Konoha. What were his people thinking? He had promised pain to anyone who did something like this, and to think that someone would be stupid enough to take actions. There hadn't been any problems before, why now? The Tsukikage calmed himself as he looked down at the letter once again. It was really disappointing that a fool could have done this and failed. He wouldn't have complained if the man had succeeded. But to fail and die, leaving him to shoulder the blame was just unacceptable. He now had to face the consequences of such foolishness. Oh, no wait, he didn't. Onoki grinned. He had washed his hands on anyone going after Minato because of their hatred. He couldn't be faulted. It didn't matter if the person was his shinobi. The fact of the matter was that he had washed his hands, and his people would agree with him on that one. That wasn't the only thing the fact that Konoha was keeping this under the wraps, and were not making ridiculous demands meant the village didn't want trouble, or they didn't have the strength to risk trouble. Since the last war, Iwagakure has recovered a bit more than Konoha. The village had recently suffered more losses when the Kyubi attacked the village. So, they would not want to risk going into war. Minato was still to be feared, but one man alone could not take on two villages. Iwagakure wasn't the only village not in good terms with Konoha. Despite their peace treaty, Kumagakure was another major power that was not in good terms with the Hidden Leaf. Even so, both had no plans to wage war against Konoha. Even if they win that war, the Hidden Leaf would no doubt inflict massive losses to each of them. That was just how powerful Konoha was, and the Tsukikage was not stupid enough to underestimate that power. Yet, Onoki wasn't going to offer an apology. He was merely going to send a message to say he had received their letter, and would take steps to ensure it doesn't happen again. He would wait, and see how Konoha reacts to it. Chapter 8. Konoha. Jiraiya looked at Naruto with a frown as the two stood atop of the village walls just away from the gates. They just returned from their month-long vacation. He had taken the redhead out of the village so that he could get some fresh air and stop training for a while and refresh his mind. It wasn't what Kushina had wished for her son, Naruto, going out on a vacation with the Sannin. The woman had given him a stern warning about teaching her son anything perverted. If she had any choice, she would have had someone take her son out, but with the situation messy outside, there was no one who could do it. The redhead hadn't been told that he was being taken away for a vacation. Jiraiya had merely said he was being true to his promise of taking him out to see the shinobi world from outside of Konoha, and that was what he had done. A number of years had passed since that incident and the redhead had returned to his normal self, but he still killed himself with training when he wasn't on duty with the military police force, hence the reason for the vacation. A month-long vacation, and the redhead had been complaining about it. "You're hard to please, you know," the Sannin said to Naruto. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. "What are you talking about?" He wasn't that hard to please. It was really easy to please him. Then again, not much really interested him, so some people could find it hard to please him. It didn't take much to make him smile though. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't a difficult person after all. "When we were outside the village, you were complaining about returning back home," the Sannin said. "But you were mad that your father had forbid you from leaving the village. When you finally leave, you want to return back home. You are now home and yet you can't even crack a smile." Naruto raised an eyebrow. "I thought I was smiling," he said calmly. "I was only complaining because the masked vacation was only taking away my time from training. However, I would be lying to say that it wasn't refreshing to have my body relaxed as well as my mind," he said with a smile. "That is more like it," Jiraiya said with a grin. He then looked at Naruto looking nervous a bit. "If your mother asks, I didn't take you anywhere I shouldn't have. I took you out to see the sea and we enjoyed some time under the sun and seeing some villages." The Sannin paused and closed the distance between him and Naruto, placing his hands on the redhead's shoulders. "Please." Naruto smiled. "Sure," he said with his eyes closed. "That smile doesn't make me comfort me," Jiraiya said. "I'll go tell your father we have returned. You go home." Naruto nodded and disappeared. Burst of flames. Jiraiya blinked. That had happened in an instant, and what Jiraiya saw were small flames like burning leaves disappearing after the blonde had flashed away. The burst had been for a second. "You didn't see it, but just small flames dying. I got have him teach me that," the Sannin said. Uzumaki compound. The moment Naruto stepped into the main house, he was welcomed by his smiling mother. No matter how big he was still her little boy, and so she didn't waste time or held back when she picked him up from the ground to crush him in a motherly hug. "You're back," she said happily. "We had missed you." "I'm 12, mother, it's embarrassing when you carry me like that," Naruto said with a blank look on his face. He sighed when he realized his mother wasn't going to take it. He smiled as he spoke the right words. "I missed you too, mother. It has only been a month though." 40 days, Kushina corrected. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "You were counting." "Of course," she said, examining Naruto's body. "You still look fit. That pervert didn't starve you." "Everything checks," she said, looking into his eyes. "You should cut your hair though. It is becoming longer." Naruto shook his head. "I prefer it this way," he said. "Karin." "Out with Izumi," Kushina said, dragging Naruto towards the main sitting room. "Tell me how things went. Izumi will be returning with your sister as you do that. I'm sure there is a lot to tell." Inwardly, Naruto frowned. He would have to improvise the story and make it light. 2 hours later, Itachi stepped into the apartment Naruto used as his hiding place. The redhead went as far as to call it his hideout. Itachi used the place as well when he needed some rest. That was the only excuse he could give his father, as the man wouldn't be pleased with him sleeping outside the compound when he was not even busy with a mission. His mother would understand though. She would say something along the lines of allowing the boys to have their own place to play. It was different with Naruto because the redhead had weapons he could use to allow his parents to do what he wanted. But of course, neither was willing to pay for his rent when he had a home. His payment from the military police worked in securing his rent and some provisions. There was no need to buy food because the redhead never cooked. If he was not eating takeouts, Uzumi come here with the ingredients for cooking him something to eat, or his mother had brought him some homemade food. The redhead in question was lying on the couch, with a book held above him. "So you have returned," Itachi said, walking over to the redhead. He pushed Naruto's feet aside in order to get some space so that he could sit. "Being in Anbu keeps you informed, huh?" Naruto said, his eyes still focused on the book he was reading. Just last year, the Uchiha was accepted into the Anbu, and had been working hard to much praise. Every corner within the Anbu there was Itachi this and Itachi that. If Naruto had been in Anbu he would have been sick already. How could one person command so much praise in a class of experts in what they did? Anbu were highly trained individuals, and yet according to Kakashi, there was no one like Itachi. Well, he was right about that. There was only one Itachi and they wouldn't be anyone like him unless they decided to clone him. Naruto didn't see the possibility of that happening. The genius Uchiha was even praised highly even amongst the Uchiha. Naruto may have been doing great things in the military police force and still working tirelessly to get them seen in the good light, he still didn't command as much as praise as Itachi did. A rational sense in him begged him to understand that despite his relationship with the Uchihas, he was still an Uzumaki, not an Uchiha. They would always praise one of their own more than they did of anyone else in the outside. He was an outsider. He might be arresting the criminals in the streets with a smile and speaking well with civilians in order to show the villagers they were not so bad and to get the police force seen in good light, but he was still not an Uchiha and had no achievements worth noting in the public eye. He was still just an Uzumaki, and no matter how hard he worked, the Uchiha would never allow someone not of their own to lead a squad. Well, he was not suited to leadership in the battlefield anyway. Even so, it made the redhead feel some jealousy towards the Uchiha, and he wasn't afraid to admit it. The day the Uchiha had made Chunin, Naruto had stated it with a smile that he was jealous that Itachi had made it to the ranks so easily while he was stuck blowing the dust in the streets. Naruto Uzumaki was a mere genin while Uchiha smelled the roses of being an Anbu, and the praises of his fellow clansmen. But of course not everyone looked at things with a pleasant eye. That didn't surprise Naruto at all. In this cruel world of shinobi, nothing could ever go perfectly unless there was some intervention from the careless gods above the heavens. Naruto closed his book and placed it on his chest, before speaking once again. Not a busy week. For someone outside of the Uchiha squad to say that they saw him every week they would be lying. The Uchiha was hardly in the village. His father was making a few complaints, but there was little he could do about it. The Uchiha was working for the village and was doing incredible things in the Anbu. When he was present, he did attend clan matters, but it was open for all to see that the village came first. Then again, Anbu reported directly to the Hokage, and their ways were strict. Insubordination wasn't allowed in Anbu. Even his kind father kept the law a law. Break it, and there were consequences for it. Well, it was to be expected. If he allowed things to go unpunished and was partial in his judgments, it would set an unwelcomed precedent that should be avoided in an important organization such as the Black Ops. Itachi shook his head in response to Naruto's question. "No, I'm off. Every now and then we do get some time off," the Uchiha said calmly. "But it isn't guaranteed that you will actually enjoy it. The Anbu are always called into action, especially with things boiling out there." "You know it better," Naruto said. "Over the past month, I have not been able to know anything. I was walking along the lines of peaceful borders. You'd never think that there are some battles going on around the elemental nations." "Not every land is affected," Itachi said calmly. Raikage isn't hiding its hostility towards Konoha shinobi though. It has been worsened by the fact that Sunagakure, though our ally, has backed away from any fights, and has opted to be neutral should any war ignite. "Cowards," Naruto said without thinking. But after going through some thoughts, he smiled. Not a bad move from them. If they can maintain their neutrality throughout all these, and even if a war does break out they won't be affected by anything. We will be exhausted, and they will be fresh from all battles. Itachi nodded. They are only thinking about themselves though. Konoha has always been supportive towards the sand, and for them to throw us out into the cold like this shows how much they value our alliance. I'm told Konoha still does business with them, Naruto said. That is something we will have to keep doing, Itachi said. Should you be questioning the move though? You're the one who has been forced to study economics by your clan because of your suitability to being Hokage. You say it like I'm the only one who is in the running, Naruto said calmly. Unless something happens in the near future, I don't think I would take the job. There is too much responsibility, and I will admit that I am not as responsible as you are. No one was ever forced to take the position of Hokage. Even if Naruto had the desire, he wouldn't take it for too long. Every Hokage had the right to choose his successor. If Naruto was forced into taking the position, he would sit at the Hokage tower for just a year or two and give the mantle to an Uchiha. It would be good to allow one of them to become a Kage. If someone who loved Konoha as Itachi did for an Uchiha and still didn't get the job, there would be no one in the future who would be given the office, and it would cause troubles in the near future. That can be fixed, Itachi said. When you're put into a position, you will have so many people looking at you, and the lives of many people depending on you to make the right choices. You're not that careless to simply shrug off everything. Naruto allowed the words to slip through his other ear. Trade with Sunigakure might be good for Konoha, but we are no dependent on it. This village is still the largest hidden village and still has many allies. The business with the small villages and the support of the feudal lord means that Konoha can still survive. Relying too much on funding from the feudal lord would be a problem though. Itachi nodded. If we rely on him, it will mean Konoha will become prone to influence from him, the Uchiha stated. What is the problem is that trade with the sand is the only trade outside of the fire country that isn't disturbed by the mercenary groups that are targeting our supply routes. It shouldn't be a problem if you're able to defend, Naruto said. They will get tired soon enough. This does exhaust the village's forces though. Oh well, it's not like the village lacks shinobi. Black ops are in shortage, Itachi said. This is I hardly take time off. Most of us when we return from a mission, we are sent back again. Itachi paused for a moment and looked at Naruto curiously. Have you thought of joining Anbu? That was a good question. Why hadn't he thought of it before? Perhaps it was because the redhead never spoke about Anbu and showed no interest in joining. He didn't speak of protecting the village in the shadows. The redhead did like the glory, but he did care for Konoha. There was no time to be picky now with things going awry on the outside. Naruto wanted a better world. A world where he could be free, and he certainly wouldn't want his younger sister to be living in the world that could threaten her existence. It wasn't safe in the outside, but they could work to make it better. Naruto had that desire as well, despite being a bit selfish. Perhaps the final decision wouldn't just lie with Naruto, but his father as well. Anbu reported directly to the Hokage, and no one else. Military police didn't even mess with Anbu unless granted permission by the Hokage. The Yondaime would probably wish for Naruto to serve in the light. They couldn't all work in the shadows. That didn't mean Itachi didn't have pleasant thoughts of fighting alongside Naruto in the Anbu gear. It would be fun as it was fun working alongside Shizui. Responding to Itachi's question, Naruto shook his head. No, the thought has never been on my mind. I don't think my father would allow it even unless it was part-time basis. I wish to rise in the ranks from Genin to Chonin and then Jonin. That would be a pleasant experience. Itachi shook his head. Nothing about the village, but he did know that it would serve the village well if Naruto fought in the front lines. He was the Yondaime's son. That came with the fear of the Hiraishin Jutsu. It would put anyone in their place if Naruto walked into the front lines. Itachi had thought of the fear the duo could inflict if they entered into the battleground. It would certainly be a double flea on sight situation. While he didn't enjoy the thought of using fear as means to control people, it would be good in this situation as it would end things without bloodshed. That still does pose a problem though. What would happen if the two were to die? The enemies would certainly become hungrier and thirstier. It would be more bloodshed. Focusing on Naruto, once again Itachi spoke. You should try it sometimes though. We could use your abilities out there. For now, no one knows anything about you, and since Anbu identities remain a secret, nobody would know that it is you, and that would give you extra cover. My time in the sidelines is almost up, Naruto said. Besides, walking into Anbu means walking into your shadow. I would rather not have that experience. If I'm joining Anbu, it will be when I have established my name. I hate it when I'm walking around, and I'm reminded that I graduated with you and you're now, and in Anbu, and I'm still a genin. Itachi stared at Naruto for a few moments. Naruto had used a childish tone with all the frustrations of a child. He smiled slightly in amusement. But that has forced you to work even harder. Yet still a genin, Naruto said bitterly. I thought rankings wouldn't matter, but it does when some people talk about me as if I can't hear them. Do you know infuriating it is when I'm carrying out my duties and I hear look at him, Itachi-sama is working out there while he stays in here in the comfort of the village. We had so much hope for him when he was rumored to be on par with Itachi. Hell, some of the children we left in the academy laugh at me. Itachi looked amused as Naruto ranted. Did you end up training with Jiraiya-sama? Itachi asked, changing the subject. He was curious. If the redhead had learned from a Sannin, then he would have learned something useful. Jiraiya was a man to be respected, his power at least. Naruto snorted in response. Itachi raised an eyebrow at the response. What? There was no training. Not a damn session of training. I wasn't expecting any lessons from the man, but to be deprived of the time to do some training was frustrating at first. If they hadn't tried it before, they would have sealed off my chakra so that I don't train. Itachi was surprised, his expression didn't show it, but he was really surprised. I thought you would get some training. My father didn't even know the specifics, because there was no warning of your disappearance from the village. There was none. Well, I ended up learning things about life and adult fun. It was both a pleasant and an unpleasant time, Naruto said calmly. I was forced to leave from training. Well, from what my father says, you were at it on a daily basis, and it will finally take its toll on you. You're just lucky you are an Uzumaki. Any normal person would have collapsed already, Itachi said. What were you doing with Jiraiya? He was wasting all the money my father gave him for traveling expenses. My mother said no to camping, so there was enough money for hotels, and yet most of the nights, we slept in the forest, Naruto said with a shake of his head. We visited all brothels the man could see within our time, and when he was not whoring around with prostitutes, he was getting drunk while sprouting nonsense. That must have been unpleasant for you, Itachi said. Naruto was still 12, he too was. But for him to be seeing such things was rather irresponsible of the Sannin. Itachi shook his head. This was wrong. The alcohol and sex were wrong, but killing was okay for a shinobi regardless of the age. That was just wrong in all the sense. Itachi couldn't believe that he had thought that way. Killing was worse than drop of alcohol. It was killing that diluted people's morals. Taking a life was not something pleasant. It had so many effects. Even so, Itachi wouldn't condone that kind of a lifestyle to someone their age. Two wrongs couldn't make a right. They couldn't say because they have done the worst everything else was acceptable. Some things they had to do and some things they ought not to. Killing was forced because of the kind of world they were living in. Not at all, Naruto said with a grin. That was perhaps the part of the time that I wasn't wearing a bored mask on my face. Those people didn't even mind me being there. The headband is the ticket to everything. One young lady said to me, old enough to kill, old enough to do anything else. I was amused. Itachi found himself staring at Naruto, wondering if the redhead had entered the adult world. Being an Anbu, Itachi understood it all. He really did. The human body was one of the lessons they did study, and all other techniques. The Uchiha shook his head. He shouldn't allow his thoughts to wander that far. Did you? Naruto smiled. What do you think? He might have proven to be irresponsible, but I don't think he would allow you to do that. Your mother would kill him if she found out, and it would just be morally wrong for him to allow something like that to happen. Naruto snorted once again. That man has no morals when it comes to women. He once had me transform into a naked girl just so he could have a rush of blood when we had run out of money. If the pockets had still been full, we wouldn't have returned today, Naruto said with a shake of his head. I believe that was the unpleasant experience, Itachi said. Bingo, Naruto said. I saw a lot of things and did a few things, but my innocence was preserved. I'm too young for that. Though, that kind of adult world does make you forget all the things inside of your head. I hope you're not suggesting what you're suggesting, Itachi said with a blank look on his face. I don't even want to know what you saw and what few things you did, the Uchiha said shaking his head. Naruto shrugged. I'd say it is better than watching a man screaming in terror when he is being tortured at military police HQ, and even less nightmare-giving than watching blood gush out of your enemies and victims. Itachi frowned. Blood that he saw every time with being Anbu? It no longer surprised him, and death was a daily occurrence. Most missions of the Black Ops involved killing someone. Itachi wouldn't say what Naruto had seen was better, but he wouldn't argue about it. He was just going to leave it as it was. It was a moral debate that would leave his head aching. What else happened? He took me to see the Slug Princess, Naruto said indifferently. Itachi shook his head. Only Naruto could be indifferent about meeting one of the legendary Sannins. Why like that? She was drunk, and couldn't say anything sensible when we met her. The following day she was in a crappy mood, and brushed me aside when Jiraiya introduced me to her. I have no interest in that kind of a person. For someone who is hailed as her, she looked rather pathetic at first, and her whining when Jiraiya spoke about returning to Konoha because of the events around hurt my ears, and I was forced to walk away, Naruto said, still in that indifferent tone. His expression complemented it. You were not impressed, Itachi managed to say. Naruto nodded. The Sannins might be great shinobi, but there is something wrong with them. They are not like your father, or my father. I can't believe that they were trained by the Sandaime Hokage. One is crazy pedophile who kidnaps children and experiments on them, the other is a shameless pervert, and the other. Just a disappointment. When you have gone through a war, it weighs heavily on your mind. Those three saw too much during the wars, and people have different ways in coping with the experiences. Some have lost themselves and some the will to fight. Orochimaru was perhaps messed up before that, but according to my father Tsunade has lost a lot in her life, and Jiraiya might as you say a pervert, but you cannot forget the effort he gives for this village. I'm not arguing with that, Naruto said with a wave of his right hand. They all fought for Konoha bravely. I really find no difference in what Tsunade has done to what Orochimaru did. That is stretching it, Itachi said firmly. Orochimaru is killing people out there, and he left the village because his evil deeds had been discovered. He deserted because he was an evil person who could not be accommodated in Konoha anymore. You cannot compare the two. I just did, Naruto said calmly. Itachi, I have been in military police for a number of years, and I know a couple of things. I visit the hospital, and I hear the nurses saying that if that woman was present, some deaths may have been prevented. Orochimaru is evil, but Tsunade is just a disappointment who has deserted the village had grandfather founded and doesn't care if people need her or not. With her power, she could make a difference. But what does she do? Roam around the world like a drunken whore? The redhead shook his head. She really acts like a year-old who has had her candy taken away from her. Do you understand her reasons for leaving? I heard them, but I don't understand them, Naruto responded calmly. Itachi, you're always talking about self-sacrifice, you should be disappointed. I'm not one to judge other people, and you of all people shouldn't, Itachi said with a stare. Naruto just shrugged off his shoulders. We all lose something in our lives, Itachi. I have not lost anything that I love. Perhaps you can argue that I speak because of it, but the only reason you should stop fighting is when you no longer have a breath in you. He got up and threw his book on the table before looking at Itachi. Let us go to the ramen stand. Your treat, that man left me dry. I have to crawl back home to my mother and ask for money later on when and go back to see my father and eat. Fine, Itachi said as he stood up. We haven't had the time to do this in quite some time. The two had taken the long walk towards the one stand that Naruto favored. Their walk hadn't been peaceful at all. It had been violated by fans of the Uchiha and some fans of the Uzumaki. To say fans of the Uzumaki was a little misleading. Naruto was being greeted by the good people as serviced pleasantly in the streets while on duty with the military police. Most people like you in the streets, Itachi said, noting that the redhead was rather popular. Perhaps it was because he stood out in the most in the military police force. It's not as bad as you said it was. Naruto shrugged. They like me because I have been keeping the streets crime-free and give a helping hand to the old and needy. It's not like me to do so, but that had been in my job description. Your father wants the people to feel free to call military police force when something is wrong, so they made me their poster boy. Itachi got the feeling that the redhead wasn't overly pleased with being reduced to being a poster boy for someone who has big dreams that surpasses dreams of many. Itachi said nothing further to that. He changed the subject to something a bit serious. My father has the Mangekyo Sharingan, the Uchiha said in a whisper. I know, Naruto responded in the same tone as Itachi. Itachi narrowed his eyes at Naruto for a moment before looking at the road ahead. He asked, since when? Some time ago. Your Sharingan had fully matured as you were gaining more experiences and meeting new challenges while in your duty as a shinobi. But your father wanted more for you. He wanted you to have eyes like Shizui as it would awaken more potential for you. Shizui was in agreement that you needed the Mangekyo as their power could allow you to actually make change and do something different. That was when he let the cat out of the bag. I don't care for his reasons, because they are Uchiha business, but I do understand that he has kept it from everyone in the clan. The Sandaime doesn't know, but I suspect my father knows. Itachi was silent for a few moments. I see, he said. I thought you would be furious with the trickery, Naruto said, eyeing Itachi at the corner of his eyes. I understood the reasons afterwards. He explained it to me and I understood. I think even faced with the same situation, I would have resorted to such an extreme measure. It is way better than the actual reality. You can get over it, but the real pain, you will be forced to live with it for the rest of your life. Later that day. Uzumaki compound. Home again, the thought was supposed to bring one some pleasant thoughts, and some joy at being at the place that one calls home. It was alright being in the presence of his family. Naruto did love his family after all. There was nothing in this world that could replace them. Not his training and certainly not his dreams. Yet, Naruto felt bored being here. He was bored and all he could do was just smile as his parents spoke about this and that, happy to have the family together once again. Naruto was happy, but the bored feeling stood out the most. Perhaps it was the subject at hand. He was grown used to being in the presence of people talking serious matters about the things that happen within the village and elemental nations that he now found all other things to be trivial talk, and it bored him. Family was important and talking to them wasn't something to scoff. This was time to be cherished, yet the feeling persisted. Back then, he wouldn't have had this feeling. Naruto blamed the damn Uchias for it. Minato looked at Naruto and smiled. The redhead was eating his dinner slowly, and although he was responding when asked something, Minato could tell the redhead was lost in his thoughts. Naruto, Minato called in a calm tone. The redhead looked up to his father. Can we talk outside after dinner? Naruto merely nodded. It was a bit strange for his father to request beforehand when he wanted to talk to him. He usually just came out with it when it was just the two of them. Perhaps the man thought that he was just going to say his good nights to Karin and retreat to his room for the night, or make his leave from the compound. It seemed that his mother seemed to know about what was going given the look on her face. She didn't seem surprised when those words left his father's mouth. A few moments passed, and dinner was over. Azumi and his mother handled the cleaning of the plates, while the boys stepped out of the house into the garden. We are going to have a person from Kumagakure to sign a non-aggression treaty. I was able to convince the Yondaime Raikage to sign it since we met a couple of occasions in the battlefield during the Third Shinobi World War, Minato said to Naruto. I suppose that is a good thing for the village, the redhead said. Minato nodded. We only have to worry about Iwagakure now. I don't know if the terms of the treaty will stick, but this will at least calm the waters, the Yondaime Hokage with a smile. I have been speaking to Fugaku, and I know from experience since we trained together. I know that you're ready to leave the village gates. With just Iwagakure to worry about, I'm sure we can manage. Naruto smiled. Now that is something that will give me a sleepless night. Ima be too excited to sleep, the redhead said in a happy tone. Minato smiled. It won't happen now. I want to look for a team for you. Actually, the other reason I have made this decision is because Kumagakure is hosting the Chunin exams in a month, and they have invited us. Since we are signing a treaty with them, I thought during the participation of the exams, you will be participating with your team, and I will try to work on the Raikage to improve relations between Kumagakure and Konoha. Minato had grown serious as he spoke. Naruto took that seriously as well, but he couldn't help but let loose of a wide grin. This is just wonderful. I can be Chunin in no time, he said happily. Minato allowed Naruto to enjoy his moment for a minute or so. Jiraiya said to give you some space to be your own man, to be able to learn how to be independent. This is what we are going to do. If you pass the Chunin exams, I will allow you to live on your own during your Chunin years. However, you must be home for dinner once during the week and on Sundays. You will not get financial help from us, and Azumi will be forbidden from bringing you food or cooking for you. You will pay for own food and cook for yourself. You will do everything for yourself. This is what it means to be independent. Naruto lost his smile. If you can't survive, you can return home at any time. Naruto stared at his father. You drive a hard bargain, he said. You know, I can't really take care of myself. I have always been taken care of, and once I become a Chunin, I will depend on that salary. It is not given that I will have missions that will pay me well. Sometimes I might not get anything that will mean hunger. Being in military police gave me stable earnings with bonuses. The redhead paused for a moment as his smile returned. Challenge accepted, he said. Good, Minato said smiling. Once you're deemed ready to take the responsibility of clan head from your mother, you will have to return to the clan. Normally, that has to be when you become Jonin, hence I said you this will only be during your Chunin years. However, given the situation outside, you may not become clan head even if you become Jonin. Naruto appeared to think for a few moments before nodding. Understandable, he said. Being clan head will mean I no longer will be a full-time shinobi. Well, most clan heads, despite still being registered as Jonins, no longer function as such. Clan heads only fight during emergencies, Minato said. But we cannot have that for you. Even if you are made clan head, your mother might still act in your stead, because your main focus will be your duties as a shinobi of Konohagakure. And I don't think you'd want to be stuck doing meetings while Itachi is making a name for himself. Obviously, Naruto said with a smile. Thank you, father, the redhead said, staring straight at his father. This really means a lot to me. He added honestly. Minato put on a nervous smile. Well, I was the one who had you remain in the village, he said with a laugh. Can you get that jutsu finished soon? In a month, Naruto said. I will still have to look into a few scrolls. Good, Minato said looking serious. After this Kumo business and your Chunin exams, you and I will have to step into a battlefield. It's something I'd not wished for you, but for the future of our family and this village, we must do it. Naruto looked at his father, who now seemed locked in a battle of trying between wearing a sad smile and a serious look. Something wrong? Not here. I will tell you after the Chunin exams, or before that. After all, I have no doubt that you will make me proud and this village proud, Minato said with a grin. which was slightly strange. 2 nights later. It was an unsaid law that the police force and Anbu wouldn't get in each other's way. The latter organization did its own sweep of surveillance in the outskirts of the village and around the village while MP did its work within the village. But of course that didn't mean some trained eyes could not spot Anbu blending in with the darkness around some few hot zones in the village, especially places that were guarded as S-rank. Military police didn't usually deal with S-rank matters. When a spy was caught with S-rank details, he/she was usually transferred to the Anbu HQ, or the guys that did the torturing. Naruto had seen a fair number of spies, both women and men. When the Uchiha interrogated, they did not discriminate. It didn't matter if they were dealing with man or a woman. The treatment was the same if they were not getting what they wanted. The Sharingan was an expert at compelling people into telling the truth, but not every Uchiha had that ability, and it seemed that it was unsaid law that the Sharingan would be used once the pain has been administered. After experiencing pain, people tended to become weak, and that was when the Sharingan showcased its abilities at being able to control people. Naruto looked at the brightly lit streets of the village from the top of the stadium. He had returned to his duties. He may have been given the pass to become a real shinobi, but he still needed to earn his living, and he was rather used to doing patrols at night. During days, the work he did was a chore and Naruto didn't like it very much, but he still had to it. At night, he could be by himself and watch the village as it fell into a sleep while the corrupted criminals awake in order to strike innocent, and sometimes not so innocent. Naruto left the stadium and headed towards the compounds where he normally patrolled. The dark alleys of the village required the Uchiha to see with their bloody eyes, and he was usually blind and required on his senses to feel. He was not most effective in the dark, but at this location he could see things clearly because it was wide and wasn't crowded. The redhead settled atop of a building where had the view of both the Nara compound and the Hyuga compound. The Ukas didn't bother with the Hyuga. Perhaps it was because of the spats that often occurred between the two clans. There was often a debate on which Jujutsu was the strongest. The Sharingan was obviously superior, but the Hyuga didn't agree with that. For the Uchiha, if the Bakugan can see everything, then they should have no problem in protecting themselves. The Hyuga were more than to do that for themselves, saying they didn't need the Uchiha to protect their clan. Naruto stayed at the place until it was 12 a.m. sharp. It spelled the end of his shift, and he could go back home. The redhead stood up and let out a yawn before flashing away. He appeared on the ground and decided to just walk back to his apartment. The Uzumaki compound was on lockdown at this time. Naruto's eyes snapped up when he saw someone hopping through the buildings. He looked for a moment before seeing that the pattern of movements was neither MP nor Anbu. Enemy, the redhead thought. Judging by the direction the person was rushing towards the forest of death. It was the only place in the village that wasn't guarded. The place was off limits after all, and at night, it was rather dangerous for a person who was not familiar. He knew the way around far better than someone not from the village. With that in mind, Naruto slipped into the shadows and disappeared. That was close, the Kumo Jonin thought as he landed in the forest. He couldn't sense anyone pursuing him, but the damn Hyugas had nearly caught him. By now he was sure they were searching all over the village for him. He wasn't worried though. Just a little far ahead and he would reach the rendezvous location. For now he just had to keep running under the trees to avoid being spotted by anyone. The price was his and he would no doubt be rewarded for his E-. Mister, the man was cut off from his thoughts when the voice spoke, putting him in defensive mode with a little girl on his back. The man looked before him. He couldn't see clearly because of the dark, but this was a brat. He couldn't sense much chakra from him. The threat level was reduced by that. What was a brat doing here anywhere? The damn forest was restricted. Naruto smiled nervously, eyes closed, while scratching the back of his head. I kind of got lost earlier today while playing hide and seek and had passed out when I was being chased by a really big spider. Could you show me the way to the village? The man was obviously a jonin and Naruto wasn't going to pick a fight with a jonin. He valued his pride to do something like that. Besides, the man had a hostage, and in a situation like this, the life of a hostage was very important. He couldn't do anything to endanger the hostage. The man may even be willing to use the hostage in order to escape with his life intact. This was a delicate situation, and Naruto wasn't going to be reckless. The man may be at a disadvantage because he was holding the person behind him, but he was going to play his cards right. He had handled situations like this before. The Uchiha's just used their damn Sharingan for genjutsu, but he did not have such card to flip. He had to use his wits. The man narrowed his eyes at Naruto for a few moments. He couldn't really waste time being here. He was already kidnapping a brat. Killing one shouldn't be a problem. The brat had clearly seen him, and if the Anbu saw him, he would be able to give a location, and they would give chase. He couldn't have that. The man took a step forward before disappearing. He appeared just in front of the kid, and the first thing he noticed was long redhead. But that didn't make him stop his left foot from picking up dust as it cleaved through the air, heading towards the brat's chest. He just wanted to knock him out and make his escape. The kick connected with Naruto's chest, and as it lifted him off the ground, while still attached to his chest, the redhead quickly brought out his hands and grabbed the leg. Naruto looked at the man and smiled as two chains burst out from his body and wrapped themselves around the man. The man dropped the person on his back as he gritted his teeth in pain because the chains were holding him too tight for comfort. He glared at the smiling redhead. "You left yourself open so that I could attack you?" he hissed as he tried to free himself from the chains. Naruto tilted his head to the side, while still smiling. "A smart one," he said. "But yes, that is what exactly happened. When you are faced with stronger opponents, you don't even try to fight them. You have them lower their guards by reducing yours to zero, and when they get close, you catch them. You wouldn't have just stood still so that I can catch you." His efforts to pry the damn chains off him were being fruitless. "How do you think you can hold me, brat? Do you think you can hold me forever? Let me go and I will spare your miserable life," the man hissed. "If this even gets out, it might cause war between Konoha and Kumagakure. You're obviously a shinobi, do you want that to happen?" Naruto lost his smile, and put on a cold look on his face. He looked down at the fallen girl and bent down to examine her while his chains held up the man. It was obviously the heir of the Uchiha clan. He looked back at the man with his cold look. "Kumo again. You once tried to kidnap my mother, now an innocent little girl. She is around my sister's age even. I should punish you." The third chakra chain came, and Naruto straightened the man to face him clearly. "We will begin your interrogation," the redhead said calmly with a small smile. "I will not have the Anbu locate us, but your screams will." Before the man could question what the redhead was saying, Naruto snapped his fingers and the chains lit red with small flames. The flames seemed like dying flames, but they were incredibly hot, and when the redhead squeezed harder, they began to burn his clothes before going to his flesh. The damn chains were wrapped around his body from below his knees to his forehead. The third chain burnt with flames as well and pointed between his eyes. But he held firm. "You crazy little shit." Naruto tilted his head to the side as he pondered loudly, "I wonder how much pain you'd experience if I drive that chain in your right eye." He shook his head. "I shouldn't be like this," he said. "Why are you doing this? How did you even get into the village? Did you come with the people from Kumo?" "I'm not going." He was cut off when the free chain pierced through his shoulder. It didn't go fast. Not just slowly, just so he could feel the flames and the sharp tip of the chain forcefully trying to pierce through his shoulder. "I will not repeat any question or questions. I will stop administering the pain when you answer. But if you say something I don't like or not satisfactory, I will continue with the punishment," Naruto stated in a calm tone. "Now that." The redhead trailed off. A squad of Anbu flashed around him, surrounding him. A second later, the Hyuga clan head appeared as well. "Where is my daughter?" the man demanded. Naruto ignored the man and looked at the Anbu. Then, the captain looked at the situation before him. He was sure it wasn't a pleasant experience the man was going through. Uzumaki-san, what are you doing? Conducting interrogation on a suspect I apprehended as a member of military police. Do you have a problem with that? Hayashi walked through and took his daughter. He checked for her pulse and sighed in relief to know that she wasn't hurt in any way. He looked back at the man and then at Naruto. He is from Kumo, and was the one who came to sign a treaty, the Hyuga said. Thank for saving my daughter, but hand over him to Anbu, they will deal with the issue. Naruto looked at the Hyuga with a smile, head tilted to the side. Is that an order, Hayashi-sama? He asked nicely. If so, I will have to refuse. We have to go through paperwork at HQ to confirm transfer of the trash. He looked at the man who let out a pained cry because Naruto hadn't stopped with his interrogation. Oh, forgot about this. He said, dispersing the flames on his chains. We are acting under orders of the Hokage, Uzumaki-san. We will take the man and we will use force if it is necessary to follow through our orders, one of the Anbu said. Naruto continued smiling while waving his hands in front of him. There is no need to go that far, Anbu-san. The chains dispersed, and the man dropped to the ground. One of the Anbu took him and disappeared, and took Naruto. You will come with us, he said to the redhead. Without even giving Naruto the chance to respond, they flashed away. Hokage office. A few minutes later. It was in the middle of the night, and Naruto knew that some people had been sleeping, and yet they were in their usual gear. The redhead shook his head, trying to shake off the oppressing atmosphere in the room. There were serious tensions, and Naruto was not used to such tensions. It became increasingly hard for him to put on a serious look when all the adults stared at him seriously, and the redhead smiled thinly with his eyes closed. What happened, Naruto? His father asked nicely. I had just completed my shift, and was heading back to my hideout when I saw someone rushing through the rooftops. I knew he was neither MP nor Anbu by his movements and decided to give chase. While on the way, I spiked up by chakra to give a signal of my direction to the Anbu. I managed to come across the man and acted like a civilian lost in the forest, knowing that since it was the dark, he couldn't see me clearly, and with my chakra suppressed, he would no doubt attack me to cover his tracks. Once he hit me, I grabbed him. Naruto explained. And, well, he said was from Kumo, and when I was able to confirm that he was trying to kidnap a Hyuga, I realized it was probably out of power, just like they tried to do with my mother. I was kind of ticked off and decided to interrogate him myself, the redhead said nervously. I see, Minato said and looked at Fugaku. Do you have questions for him? Fugaku shook his head. I will speak to him tomorrow in the morning. You can release him if you wish. If Anbu want anything, I will give them tomorrow after I have spoken to him. You do understand what I am saying, right? Minato nodded. Naruto fell under the control of Fugaku. He may have graduated from the academy and gotten his headband, but had yet to register as a shinobi. It was the only way Minato could think of that could keep his son a secret from the outside world. Secure information could sometimes leak out. Unofficial reports could be disputed. Go home, Naruto. Home, the Yondaime Hokage emphasized firmly. They are waiting for you. Naruto nodded and bowed his head. Excuse me, the redhead said before disappearing via his unique body flicker technique. Ah, that must be the jutsu Jiraiya was talking about, the Sandaime said, seeing the dispersing flames. He shook his head. We have a serious matter in our hands here. Minato nodded. We can deal with this first thing tomorrow morning. That man has been locked up in Anbu cells, and will be guarded until morning. We know the motive, so there is no need to interrogate him. For now, I suggest we go to rest. We can't make decisions now with emotions high. The Sandaime nodded. I have to agree with you. Let us meet first thing in the morning at 7 a.m. sharp. The following morning. War room. Minato had a look of a tired man. He hadn't slept all night, as he had been thinking of ways to handle the matter that could result in more hostility. He had been a bit too happy to think that Kumagakure would be an ally. That had been a relief to him. But now he knew Konoha had two enemies. His plan to gain an ally in the great villages had to be fast-tracked. But it would wait for this matter to calm down a bit. He couldn't allow such a thing to destroy this village or the peace the villagers were enjoying. The shinobi were the ones fighting, the civilians were at peace. Battles were not occurring in their doorsteps after all. They were happening far beyond their vision. They could not see. They just remained ignorant of the reality. But this scandalous betrayal of trust from Kumagakure could cause the peace to be disturbed and the village to be shaken. This would eventually reach the villagers' ears. For now it would be hidden. The world was really a cruel place. Some people were willing to do anything for power. He really hated this reality. Peace looked far out of reach at this moment. Everything was just going wrong and Minato was wondering if he would be able to step away from the battlefield in his lifetime, or his reign as Yondaime Hokage. Since he assumed the role of Hokage, it has been a mess after a mess, and Minato was becoming worried for the future. Naruto's generation would not enjoy their prime years as things stood. They would be forced to fight in order to secure the future for the next generation. It made Minato frown knowing that his son would be forced into this kind of a world. At least he had been training harder in order to survive and Minato had no doubt that his son would survive. Perhaps he would even see grandchildren. At this stage, that seemed to be the only thing that made Minato hopeful for the future. The Sandaime Hokage was first to appear in the room. The old man sat down quietly. He merely gave Minato a nod and settled back into his thoughts. Fugaku followed shortly and was followed by Inoichi Heishi, Anbu Commander, and Shikaku. The unexpected occurred when Danzo walked in as well. But no one told him to go back to the hole he came from. I did not see this coming, Shikaku started calmly. We have always known that Kumagakure has always been power-hungry, but this was unexpected. I never thought that they would do something so sinister. The treaty that had been signed had had some terms that would cause serious consequences, and it didn't matter if the village had been the one to wrong them. The fact was that if a Kumagakure shinobi died in this village, there would be massive consequences. Konoha didn't want a war at any moment. The only reason they'd even bother trying to sign a treaty was because they did not seek a war. But it looks like they would have to scrap the treaty. Kumagakure obviously had no intentions of allying with them. They had other motives and Konoha could not afford to respect such people. People would understand whatever action they took. Even if they wage war on Kumo, it would be understandable. Wars have been started on far less reasons after all. Shikaku shook his head. What was he thinking? It was bound to happen, Danzo said in the cold and emotionless tone of his. Konoha has been quiet since the Third War ended and these villages think that we have grown weak. The Kyubi incident has not done us any favors. If you people had listened to me and continued on to crush Iwa, Kumo wouldn't have had the stomach to do this. We are not here to play the blame game, Danzo, Sarutobi said flatly. Besides, advancing further would have hurt the village. We have already gone this, and we will not go through it again. The decision was made and it served us well. This is a separate matter. Don't be naive, Hiruzen. Danzo shouted, seemingly losing his calm. It caused silence to wash over the chambers as the man was known for his greater than normal emotional control. It is stupid to say these things are not connected. There is a connection. Something has to be done to remind these villages that we have not become weak. Danzo was more than willing to take matters into his own hands if things continued like this. His love for Konoha was being seriously wounded by the arrogance of both the Raikage and the Tsukikage. What is the plan, Hokage-sama? I cannot forgive that man for trying to take my daughter. We all know the motive was to have the Byakugan and study its secrets. That is a crime that Kumagakure has committed and it wouldn't be wrong to execute that man on this ground, Heishi said firmly. We will not execute him, but we will send him back to Kumo, and make sure he gets there, Minato said. However, once he has reached Kumo, we will demand that he be brought back to Konoha for the crime, and Kumo pay for this treachery and for compensation as well. How can you be so naive? That will not solve anything. Danzo snapped. Minato remained calm. I never said it would solve anything, but it will at least gain us allies who will be willing to fight with us and stop a war with Kumagakure. While I hope that we can solve things, this action cannot be forgiven, and the Raikage also has to come here and issue an apology. Those will be our terms. And if they refuse? Shikaku asked. I know the Raikage is a proud man. An apology isn't something he can do, Hayashi said. But not killing the man will not give him a reason of saying we betrayed the treaty we signed, and even if he does make some demands of his own, we cannot afford to bow to the threat of war. That was something Danzo could agree with. This is the time to show Konoha's power, Danzo said firmly. I will have to agree with you on that note, Danzo, Fugaku said. We cannot allow these villages to push us and test us like this. Iwagakure has yet to even meet our demands. Going gently doesn't appear to working, and it will only be a matter of time before these villages collude to fight us. Minato sighed. I fear something like that will happen. It may not be tomorrow, but it will happen in the near future. It won't happen now, but we also have to stall as we prepare our forces, the Yondaime Hokage said. I will head to Kiri and offer my support to the rebels in their fight against the Yondaime Mizukage. While Konoha has refrained from interfering in other villages' political business, this is about what is right and wrong. We also have our own village to defend. What do you hope to achieve by that? Inoichi asked. Isn't it obvious? Shikaku asked quietly. The reason Il accepted the peace treaty was because of the fear of the Hiraishin. Hokage-sama has been quiet since the war, and some people may start to think there is no one better to take the lead in showcasing Konoha's strength than the Hokage. Once what happens in Kiri becomes known, the fear of the jutsu will be reinforced, the Nara said. Plus, we will gain an ally who will not betray us so easily. It's like killing two birds in one stone. Am I wrong, Hokage-sama? Minato shook his head, impressed that the Nara was able to work things out. That will calm things, and if they get the message, they won't attack now. This will give Kiri a chance to rebuild, and of course, we will lend our strength to ensure that it rebuilds quickly. Since you will be liberating it, shouldn't it better if we just colonize the village? Once it rebuilds, it will add to our military power. You can dream about that, Danzo, but it will not happen, Minato said firmly. I will not go alone to Kiri when the time comes. I will take my son with me. He has developed a jutsu that can work like mine, but only for short distances. However, it is quite effective in a war zone. Shikaku smiled. Double the fear, he said. Danzo narrowed his eyes. That was something new. What kind of a jutsu is this? He had tried to get Minato to teach some of his forces or some jonins the Hiraishin, but the blonde Hokage had said it was impossible and even refused to give him the jutsu's formula. Perhaps this was something he could gain from Naruto. Not something you should concern yourself with, Danzo, Fugaku said calmly. What about the Chunin exams? Despite the risks, Naruto will still participate. We cannot allow the opportunity to pass. We must take this chance to show other villages the power of our young ones. Itachi has already showed it before, now it is time for Naruto to remind them. Only one team will go, Minato said firmly. He then looked at Danzo, good thing you came. By 9 a.m. I want you to have prepared your best men to take that man back to Kumagakure. If he does not get to Kumo alive, you must have made preparations to escape this village. Minato didn't explain why, but Danzo got the message. With nothing else to say, he stood up and left the room. Well played, the Sandaime Hokage said to Minato. If you had sent your own Anbu, Danzo would have made sure the man died along the way. This way, instead of making sure the man does die, he will be protecting him. That is the best way to manage him, Minato said, managing a smile. It is unfortunate that Naruto had to be the one to catch him though. By end week, they will know about your son, Fugaku stated. All the more reasons Naruto has to go to Kumo for the exams, I presume, Shikaku said. What if Kumo does wage war? Their Jinchurikis are not a problem. The Uzumaki can take care of them. If it is about weapons, we have our own weapons, 3 of them. I'm not included in that equation, Minato said calmly. If they decide to wage war, we can survive it, but I would rather we do not, and I will do what I can without allowing Konoha to be bullied to avoid war. We will have to request more funds from the daimyo then, the Sandaime said. They will be needed to strengthen our village. I have already sent a message requesting a meeting with him, Minato said calmly. Uchiha compound. About an hour later, Naruto was sitting before Fugaku and a few senior military police force officials. His statement about the events that occurred during the night had already been taken. They had been impassive throughout the matter, not giving away anything. Well, at least the Uchiha's who took his statement. He would have given his report after night, but his father had said he should go home and Fugaku had given him the okay for that. He may have been an ignorant fool, but from what his father was saying when he got back home, there were some serious matters that had been triggered by Kumogakure's treachery. Itachi would be disappointed when he does hear about this. The Uchiha was not a fan of such activities and backstabbing. But it was happening and made Naruto really question what living the right way in this corrupted world really meant. A few years ago I was really skeptical about allowing you in the forces, Inabi said to Naruto as he started off things. But since you started working, you have been exemplary and have worked hard in the streets to get us liked once again. Because of your efforts, the police force uniform isn't to be scorned, but people actually look up to us for justice. One of the senior officials continued after Inabi had spoken. It is not everyone who appreciates us, but this is the start. We can also change our attitudes. We have been changing and it is working for us as a clan, and it helps us do our job much easier with the villagers willing to cooperate with us. Naruto tilted his head to the side. They were telling him good things, but he could feel that there was something that was going to come after those words. Almost felt like he was being divorced, or something like that. The redhead didn't say anything though, he merely listened on as Fugaku took over. We will always be grateful for allowing us to use you for the benefit of this clan, the man stated is so bluntly. Naruto didn't look surprised. It was to be expected. Your father has told me that you will be doing shinobi duties. We have to release you from our roster. Naruto showed nothing on his face. He was surprised, but he should have expected it. He wouldn't have the time for this kind of a job, and since he was Naruto Uzumaki, he would have to focus on his shinobi duties and clan matters. There was really no other choice. Now on to serious matters, Fugaku said firmly. Kumo will soon know that it was you who stopped that man from kidnapping Hinata, and they will not like it. To be toppled by a 12-year-old. That should be embarrassing. What concerns me is how Kumo will react to what you did to that man. The medics patched him up. The marks your chains left in his body cannot be removed. They are like imprints. Well, it will teach him a good lesson anyway. So, I have not done anything wrong, Naruto said. His father had said the same thing and actually praised him for stopping that man. The man didn't comment on his torture techniques though. Fugaku shook his head. Not at all, you acted excellently and Hayashi will know it for all his life that his heir is alive because of the military police force, the man said with a small smile. Kumo will probably put you in their bingo books, and since you're Minato's son your ranking may not be high, but the amount on your head will be high. That was something to frown about. Well, I don't like them anyway, the redhead said. Fugaku shook his head. Your clan maintained a healthy relationship with the Senju and relationship was never betrayed by your people. I wish for Itachi to remain friends with you and once both of you are clan heads you start a friendship between the Uzumaki and the Uchiha. Fugaku took out a blue cloth and motioned for Naruto to come and take it. The redhead walked over to the Uchiha and gracefully took the cloth. The dark blue color was not his favorite, but this held more than just what he favored. The cloth was a t-shirt, the right sleeve had the Uzumaki symbol on it, and while the left had the Uchiha fan. If you approve, both my sons will wear this as a sign of friendship. Chapter 9. Kumogakure. Raikage's office. A frown when the white-masked men dropped Mikado inside his office. The worrying fact was that they had done before his Anbu could even react to their presence. How had they even infiltrated his village while carrying a man without anyone knowing? It was infuriating, and a clear message from whoever sent the man. It bothered him, and he was displeased with this incompetence. They could be good, but this was a little too much. Had his Anbu been sleeping when the men appeared in the office? He hadn't sensed them, but that was not his job. It was the Anbu's job to sense them and act accordingly before anything happens. A thought deep for a few moments, this was a clear security risk, and if those men could get into his village and do this, what more could they do? Who knew if they were coming and going at any time they chose, while he remained ignorant of it? He would have to take measures to avoid such a thing happening again. On to the other matter, A's frown deepened when Mikado stirred, waking up. This meant he had failed, and he didn't look too well. This was a problem, even though he had made plans to make sure he was able to handle the outfall of this should it fail. He didn't expect Konoha to respond in this kind. This was a bold statement. The men appearing here had said one thing, and it was clear, even though they did not open their mouths: "We can get to you at any time." But his people could not freely move without getting caught. This had been the best man for the job, and yet he failed. Konoha's Anbu were trained well. Well, the village was still the strongest in the Great Five. He shouldn't really be surprised. Yes, failure had been accounted for, and the treaty had been another way for him to get what he wanted. But the fact that Konoha didn't kill this man complicated things a bit, and it made them problematic. He hadn't expected things to occur this way. He understood he was dealing with the Sandaime Hokage and the Yondaime Hokage. Both were not stupid. They were renowned for use of their heads, and he had met Minato on a couple of occasions, and he was never able to have the upper hand against the cage. Even so, he was not going to allow things to go out of hand. There was no letter, so that meant Mikado had everything that was needed. The message must have been given to him. Looking at the man carefully, I noted the chain marks on the man's forehead. It looked like a hot chain had been stamped on his forehead. That must have been unpleasant, a thought. The Raikage motioned for his Anbu to hit the man as he was waking up too slowly for his liking. There was an emergency, and if nothing was broken, he needed to speak. It was his fault for getting caught anyway. Even if the man had been given orders not to return to the village if he failed, there didn't seem to be any choice because Konoha had made sure he was returned. Curse that village. Mikado nearly jumped up when pain shot through his aching head, but he immediately calmed down when he realized that he was in the Raikage's office. The first thought that came was failure, and he became fearful. He had failed, and he was probably going to die. No, he was going to die. Konoha had demanded his head and made sure he didn't commit suicide when they had locked him in a cell. "You failed," a clearly displeased Raikage stated, glaring at Mikado. "What happened?" Mikado shifted uncomfortably for a few moments under the stare of the Raikage before he finally responded. "I managed to get the girl and escape from the Hyugas, but when I reached the forest heading towards the rendezvous location, this brat wandered in front of me asking that I show him directions back to the village as he had been lost. I could only sense little chakra from him, so I thought he might be an academy student and decided to just take him out." The man frowned when he said that. "What happened?" A demanded impatiently. "When I attacked, he caught me. He just lowered his guard, and since it was dark, I couldn't see clearly. He grabbed by some chakra chains did this to me," the man said, tearing his shirt. The same marks on his forehead were all over his chest. He called it interrogation. The Anbu came moments later and called him Uzumaki before they took me away. I looked at the man he called a Jonin leader with pure disdain. "You got captured by a brat." It was unthinkable. How could this man even dare sit before him without asking to be executed? He had been stopped by a mere brat. Not the Anbu, but a brat. This was an incident that could spell a war with Konoha. I didn't fear the war. He could hold Minato down, but it was just unacceptable to think that the greatest laid plans to acquire the Byakugan and its secrets had been stopped by a brat. He was not just a brat, Raikage-sama, the man said quickly. He wasn't strong, but he was smart. His tactic proved that, and I think anyone would have fallen for it, considering the situation. "Are you justifying your failure?" The man shook his head vigorously. Of course not. My failure is unacceptable, he said. I was not able to see things clearly, but they called him Uzumaki and he had red hair. I think he was the son of the Yondaime Hokage. Stared at Mikado for a few moments before taking a picture from one of his drawers. This brat. Mikado nodded. Yes, it was him, he said. From what I was able to gather, he is part of Konoha's military police force. I know reports say he isn't a shinobi, but the fact that he is in military police force proves he is a shinobi and Konoha is just keeping him hidden. You said he did this to you, the Raikage said in thought. Those damn Uzumaki are known for strong chakra, and it appears that the boy has inherited it as well. What more can you tell me about him? Aside from the use of chakra chains, and what appears to be a high level of control over the Katan element, he had the look of someone who has killed, Mikado said. I see, said. What are Konoha's demands? They want an apology, compensation for the trauma caused to the Hyuga and my head, the man said. I am prepared to die, Raikage-sama. I failed miserably and it is humiliating that I was stopped by a child. Konoha isn't getting anything from us, the Raikage said. Get out of my sight. I will think of your punishment later on. The man hurriedly left the office without a word. Watch him, ordered one of the Anbu before leaning back to his chair. So Minato's son is a shinobi and a fighter, huh? The man thought with a smile. Was going to force them to reveal more of the redhead, and he would test the waters to just what the redhead could do. It would be problematic if the brat can use his father's jutsu as well. Konoha had accepted his invitation for the Chunin exams, and if they are still bent on coming, he would not refuse them the chance. He guessed it would be time for Minato's son to rise to the occasion, and if he proves to be a problem, he could be eliminated. Everything that was a threat to his village should be eliminated. He looked back at the remaining Anbu. Get me Ujido? Konohagakure. Hokage office. It was in the middle of the day when Minato called Naruto into his office to talk to him about his team placement. He would obviously have to be taken to a team to participate in the Chunin exams, but Minato did not wish to pull another Itachi with Naruto. Going that far would reveal so much that he wished could stay hidden. The Yondaime Hokage smiled when Naruto entered the office with a book he clearly recognized as the bingo book. The smile disappeared on his face. He would rather have not the redhead know about that, but there was nothing he could do about it. He would know about it eventually. Knowing would help him become prepared for anything that may face him. People handled situations when they were prepared for them. Even so, Minato missed for the days Naruto used to remain ignorant to everything. It was much simpler to handle things that way, and Naruto wouldn't be asking him too many questions about the real world. Well, the situations they have faced until now have helped mend the relationship with his son, and have made things better. It was unfortunate that things occurred in the manner they did, but he was glad that he still had his family. You found that, huh? Minato said calmly. It wasn't that he hadn't expected Kumagakure to name Naruto in their bingo books, he had expected, but it didn't make him happy that they had gone as far as to put a bullseye target on his son's head. It was enough that there was a bounty on his head, but for his son as well. He wasn't worried about his safety because Shinobi actually ran from him despite the bounty on his head. It was different with Naruto though. Very different. What eased Minato's worries was that Naruto could defend himself. Literally. The redhead's defensive technique could allow him to live even when faced against an S-rank shinobi. As so long as Naruto was able to maintain his jutsu, he could live even after being faced by S-rank jutsus. The Rasengan couldn't break through, Kakashi's lightning cutter couldn't cut through, the jutsu was just amazing. Minato had no doubt that as long as it was active his son would live to see another day, no matter what. It was as Naruto called it, the perfect defensive jutsu. The redhead nodded at his father's statement. It's easy to get one of those when almost everyone knows your name, he said, looking slightly bored. I'm rather disappointed that they would choose to make me a mere D-rank shinobi and yet still put a large sum of money for me to be brought alive. Only Naruto would worry about that. It really worried Minato that his son didn't seem to be worried about the fact that he was in the bingo book. Well, they did put out a D rank sum should you be turned in debt. The Yondaime just felt strange even saying that. Shouldn't you really be worried though? You will have people coming after your life. Curse that Raikage for doing something like this. Shouldn't he have just accepted that he failed to get his power-hungry hands on the Byakugan, and seek to repent? Kumo had tried with Kushina and they failed. They had failed once again and Konoha wasn't in the state to be making troubles for all these even though such treachery could spark a war. Certainly, if it was Danzo's choice, he would have ordered for a large plate with A's head. What had happened though? The man he met during the war was not one who looked like a power-hungry fool who would do anything to gain it even if it meant that kind of sinister treachery. Was it his plan, or was he forced to make the decision by the council? Some village councils really did control their cages and had the power to make things behind his back. Minato shook his head. Thinking about it wasn't going to solve it. He focused on his son as he begun to speak. Well, this is nothing new. There were always going to be people after my head because of my relationship with you. What they have done is just put a price on it, the redhead answered in a calm tone, almost indifferent. Minato blinked when Naruto said that. Put a price on it, huh? He managed to smile before chuckling. It was somewhat amusing on how it sounded. Besides, it makes it a lot better since I know that this is something that happened because of my actions. It isn't because I walk in the shadow of my father, but because I stopped their pursuit for the Byakugan, the redhead added. And you kept that man alive, Minato said with a smile. This was designed in such a way that should that man have died, Konoha would be the one doing something wrong, and they would have had the grounds to make demands. But thanks to me, nothing bad happened, Naruto said as he tilted his head to the side. Why do you want to see me? Oh, Minato blinked. It had slipped his mind. I have found a team for you. Throughout this December, I'd like you to grow acquainted to them because in January, you will be heading out to Kumagakure with them for the Chunin exams. Naruto nodded. Where are they? You will meet them tomorrow at 8 a.m. Training Ground 8. Make a good impression, Minato said. Naruto waved his right hand. Yay, he said indifferently. First impressions last, and some people have some high standards of me since it became known that I foiled an attack by Kumo to kidnap the Heir. Minato merely smiled. It was not all bad. There was some good. The bright side was something to smile about. Naruto was becoming loved by the villagers once again. Perhaps it was correct to say that the old love was returning. He had been patrolling the streets, making the peace as well as making a name for himself as the kind son of the Hokage who looked after people, and now he had saved the heir of the politically powerful Hyuga clan. Good thing you know, the Hokage said. I will bring my former student home at around 4 p.m., be there he will spar with you. Kenjutsu only. His father's remaining student was Kakashi. Itachi had spoken about his genius in more than one occasion since the Uchiha's first team had been with the famed Sharingan user. The Anbu was also known to the Uchiha. How could they not? He was the non-Uchiha who wielded their famous Dijutsu, having been given it by a teammate who died during the Third World War. Naruto was rather fond of the man. They had met up in the past when the man was a little gloomy. But he guessed since the man returned real ammunitions, there wasn't any more time to spend together. Naruto smiled at his father. He would be more than happy to have a look at his father's student and a person who Itachi spoke only praises about. If Itachi praised someone for their skill, then they could be no doubt that the Anbu was good. Despite knowing the man had never ventured into the deep world of the man's skills, it had been just casual talk between them. I'll be there, the redhead said before turning away from his father. A few minutes later, Naruto's apartment. Naruto was welcomed by a sleeping Itachi and his younger brother when he walked into the small sitting room. The younger Uchiha was lying on his brother's chest with the older one lying on his back. The redhead shook his head. As far as he knew, the Uchiha had been out on a mission. What was he even doing here? With his brother for that matter. Well, the place had become like a secondary home to the Uchiha as well. He really shouldn't be asking himself the question. Anbu instincts kicked in when Naruto threw the bingo book on the small coffee table, and Itachi's eyes snapped open and he looked at Naruto. The redhead didn't mind the look. He just made his way to the side of the couch and made himself comfortable. "When did you get back?" "This morning," Itachi said as he gently got up so not to wake Sasuke. He did so successfully and was able to sit up straight. "And you have all the energy to be walking around the village with your younger brother. You're obviously tired. Don't you know the concept of rest?" Now that was just being a hypocrite. Naruto worked himself until he was worn out when he was training. He didn't even like it when someone tells him to take some time off from his training. Between him and the Uchiha, the person who continuously forces his body to work even when it was demanding rest was him. Itachi stared at Naruto with a look that clearly expressed the above thoughts. The Uchiha slightly shook his head when Naruto merely stared back. "I have another mission tomorrow. It might be a long one, so I'm spending as much time as I can with my younger brother. I will fully rest at night." Naruto simply nodded. "When are you going to enter the bingo book?" Itachi shrugged. "I'm Anbu," the Uchiha said. "Most of my abilities and actions remain classified," he added. "D rank, huh? Father suggested that you wouldn't be overly pleased with it." "Might have been displeased," Naruto said, not giving a precise answer. He leaned back on the couch and looked over to the ceiling, unblinking for a few moments. "This world is rather treacherous and cruel by nature, isn't it?" Itachi shook his head. "The world is a good place to live in," the Uchiha said firmly. "But the system that we have created corrupts the world. The shinobi system is flawed, and is responsible for the calamity that has fallen on this world. Evil desires cause people to do what is wrong, and these desires are what usually treacherous actions, which in turn breeds hatred. With time, the hatred turns violent." Naruto appeared what to think about things for a few moments. Being on the streets with the military police makes you see so many things about people. You learn to understand how people think, how to read them, and to handle petty arguments. We say we fight for justice, but I have questioned if I truly do fight for justice. What is justice in the first place? Is there really a universal standard for a code of conduct? If yes, is it really righteous? Itachi turned to Naruto for a moment before asking, "What answers have you come with?" Naruto just smiled. "Nothing really. I don't seem to be concerned about justice and who should deliver it. Perhaps it is wrong to say so, but if I feel that doing what my heart is telling me is right, who has the right to judge? I respect innocent lives and hate backstabbing people, but I am a violent person. All shinobi are." "That is one way to look at it," Itachi said. "But I believe that whether you can be called a violent person depends on whether you think that violence can solve all problems. You cannot count the missions that we do as shinobi. Fighting is part of our lives. You cannot be a shinobi unless you fight, and you cannot protect anything without a fight. If you think that talking can solve all things without raising your fists, you will lose so many things. Talking does help. It is a powerful tool that must be used at all times, but it normally works after violence. Shinobi understand things better through their bodies. Some people cannot be reasoned with, huh?" Naruto said in thought. "Well, we must do what we must in order to protect what we must and in order to survive. I'm a winner, but I do understand that death brings something to both sides, pain. Sometimes you may win the battle and yet lose something. This is why I tell you this: do whatever you can to survive and protect what must be protected, but do not compromise on your principles. Once you do that, you will compromise your morals, and without even realizing it, you may end up corrupting them." Morals? Naruto certainly had those. Naruto isn't a saint, Itachi. He is not innocent, and understands that very carefully. "I will never try to be a saint. I have blood on my hands, but I'm not stupid enough to actually think that whatever I touch will become corrupted." "Nobody expects you to be a saint," Itachi said in a firm tone. "To do the right thing doesn't mean that one is pure or a saint, it is simply that we understand what must be done, and what we must not. People can change from good to bad. While we cannot say that the accepted moral code of what is right and wrong is truly righteous, we must strive for what is acceptable. There was a clear line of what was wrong and right. People tended to ignore the barriers and simply do what they wish. Morals could be easily corrupted, and people could be easily swayed into the wrong path. Those who didn't have a strong will and those who had those gullible hearts were easily tossed to the side by the situations that surrounded them. Itachi believed that for one to actually say he was strong, he had to be able to withstand whatever it was that life decided to toss along the way. That wasn't to say that you could not stumble. Great warriors were those who stumbled and still tried to fight their way up. It was those people who could be corrupted, but acknowledge it and try by means to clean the corruption in their hearts. The first step towards conciliation started with acknowledging one's faults. People often didn't wish to accept their flaws and their shortcomings. But nobody is perfect. Not in this shinobi world. The Sandaime Hokage, revered as he was not without faults. Even the active Hokage wasn't perfect. Nobody is really perfect in this world, but just because we accept that no one is really perfect doesn't mean that we must hide our defects behind the curtain of our imperfections, Itachi added in a serious tone. We must always strive to improve ourselves, Learning is an everyday thing. You never do stop learning. It has been years since I entered the field of learners, and yet even with all the clones I have been able to create and the hours that I have spent studying observing people, there is still so much that I do not know about this world and life in general, Naruto said in thought. Neither can I say I have mastered life, Itachi said. But we have the next day to learn, and the next to correct our mistakes. Perhaps the fact that we never stop learning is what makes life interesting, the Uchiha added in thought. Perhaps, Naruto said with a small nod. If everyone had things figured out, there would be no problems, and people wouldn't struggle for anything. Would there be a need to even look forward to tomorrow? Perhaps men's need to make plans for the future is his attempts to try to define destiny, and be able to tell what will happen tomorrow. The feeling that you're not in control over your own life can be demoralizing, and you can lose the will to live. What is the point of struggling if you can't control your life? Naruto tilted his head to the side. Does this lead what they call fate? So often you hear people saying that you cannot fight, and you cannot defy destiny. Honestly, I hate those concepts. That is because you like your freedom and being independent. You don't want to believe that there might be some divine force pulling the strings to shape your life, Itachi said. He looked thoughtful for a few moments before asking. What would happen if you were to become Hokage? I'd be orange instead of red, Naruto said with a shake of his head. What to do now? Itachi smiled. He didn't get to say anything as Sasuke began to stir. The Uchiha turned to Naruto. Why don't we take the kids out to the park? We can go back to your home and take your sister. Why not? Naruto said as he stood up. Later. Uzumaki compound. Naruto, Minato said calling his son. The redhead was sitting in the middle of the training ground with his notes close to him. Minato was walking towards Naruto along with Kakashi. Naruto looked at his father for a moment before looking back at his work. Was it time already? He hadn't done what he wanted to do, and he really wanted more time to work. He really should have paid extra attention to Fuinjutsu lessons. There had been no slacking off before because that woman would kill him and she was always watching. Even with all these years, the art was still really difficult. There was always something complex that needed to be solved. A mistake while making the seals, and it could prove fatal. Safety always came first, and Naruto had the luxury to use his clones in order to test things out. He did end up experiencing the whole thing in the end, but at least he didn't add any more wounds to his already wounded body. What are you working on? Kakashi asked as he leaned over to Naruto's notes. Naruto looked at the Anbu. Are you interested in Fuinjutsu as well? Kakashi nodded. But not as much as you do. I don't add it to my fighting style. There are just some of those convenient seals that every shinobi must know. But I am knowledgeable about the art, the Anbu said. Sensei taught me a few things since I was pretty smart. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Has your mind dulled? The redhead said before a memory flashed into his mind. Is it those books written by that perverted Sannin? Kakashi just smiled a bit awkwardly. Not at all, he said. Those books are art, they were his precious, and they could not do anything to dull his mind. He was still sharp. Well, when he wanted to be. How do you know about those, Naruto? Minato asked, looking at Naruto with a slight serious expression on his face. Have you read them? Do you have one in your possession? Naruto stared at his father for a moment before shaking his head. Jiraiya told me about them. While on our trip, we did go to his editor, and he was speaking about another release to the series. There is another book going to be released. Did you happen to get a copy? Kakashi asked, now in Naruto's face. Kakashi, Minato warned. Tell me you have not read those books, Naruto. Please tell me you have not read them. I have not read them, Naruto said, what his father wanted to hear. I do, however, have the copy Jiraiya gave me in my apartment. I haven't read it yet. I'm saving for when I feel like an adult. Right now, I am just a 12-year-old brat who has seen too much. Minato smiled at Naruto, looking relieved. I'm glad you think that way, the man said before speaking in a whisper. Don't ever mention that book to your mother, okay? Given the seriousness in his father's tone, Naruto simply nodded. He did not wish to see what would happen if his mother knew. Jiraiya nearly begged him not to tell his mother anything. His mother could act like a bloodthirsty monster when infuriated. It has been long since he last saw her in that mode though. Answering Kakashi's first question, gravity, the blonde said. My field has been completed, but the gravity within the field still affects me. I'm looking for ways to negate it. Why don't you just create an anti-gravity seal that will be applied on your body, that way you can move freely, Kakashi offered as if the thought was really simple. Naruto took a paper from the side, and motioned for Kakashi to lean closer so that he could take a look at it. When the Jonin neared, Naruto slammed the paper on his face. The moment he did so, Kakashi's face hit the ground. It's not simple as you make it sound, Kakashi. Really? The way you said ticks me off a little, the redhead said calmly. First I must study how to create an anti-gravity seal. The seal I created is attracted to chakra, so I must work on a formula to negate that attraction. The idea is not create a seal that works opposite to this, but I must know what the effects will be, and the big question, how do I even create such a seal? A little help here, Kakashi said with his face still kissing the ground. Minato helped his student by turning him over and drew lines with his chakra on his forehead, removing the seal Naruto had placed on Kakashi. What was that? The man asked his sensei. Wait, seal? No, Minato said. This whole training ground is fielded by a special seal. It's like a magnetic field. It doesn't react to chakra. There is one rule in this field for it to work, and it is that you must have a specific mark on you for the attraction force to pull you down. This force is always active. Unless you have what attracts it, it won't affect you. Naruto applied it on your face. That was only your face was forced down. It isn't absolute though. Physically stronger shinobi like guy who are used to weights can bear with it. Don't ask why I don't just use this for my creation, or why I don't just ask my father, the redhead said to Kakashi. He folded his notes and stood up. Then, you have been taught kenjutsu by Shizui, but I have not actually seen you battle. It is much different when you're doing it with someone while I watch. I want to see if there is anything that can be added to your play with the sword before you even leave the village walls. Kakashi is a superior opponent. You will have to give it your all. Although Naruto smiled, inwardly he was frowning. But he shook the thoughts that were making him frown, and just thought this is a friendly battle that meant nothing. He didn't want to be on the losing side. Shall we, Kakashi? The redhead said with his smile as he held out his right hand, and his custom blade appeared in a puff of smoke. Kakashi looked at the sword carefully. It was a katana, but obviously not a normal katana. He could tell that it was custom made. The man took out his kodaki and took a stance. Before you begin, Kakashi, Minato said, opting to give his former student a warning. Here is what you should know about that sword. Its material is chakra conducive, and against a normal sword that sword will shatter after a couple of clashes. Naruto can also channel his chakra through it to reinforce the blade. You can simply say he liquidates his chakra chain around the sword. When that happens, that blade is unbreakable, but it can't through anything. However, I advise that you not allow it to hit you. That's not fair, Naruto said to his father. You will not always have the element of surprise in every battle. You must know how to fight when the opponent knows your tricks. Minato said as he jumped away. Now, begin. Training Ground 8. The following day. Around 7 a.m. Kirena was forced out of her meditation when she sensed someone making her way into the training ground. She was usually alone at this time of the morning, and this wasn't the place where people actually just wander to. The Genjutsu mistress opened her eyes and saw Naruto. His red hair was shoulder length. The hair around his forehead was pulled over to the left side and tied so that it doesn't by a blue strand, but it did hide his headband a little. He was wearing long-sleeved dark blue shirt and dark blue pants, and the last piece was light blue shinobi boots. Looking at his face, Kirena could tell that he was going to be a handsome young man in a couple of years. Well, that was the Yondaime son. No one has ever accused the man of not being good-looking. Naruto would follow that path as well. Kirena watched the redhead as he walked over to a tree and sat down. It appeared that he hadn't sensed her presence. For someone who was with the military police, that was just wrong. She wasn't even trying to hide her presence. Or perhaps he was just ignoring her. He was at once been infamous for being an ignorant child. When he just sat under a tree, Kirena grew curious and walked over there. You should be careful with your surroundings, the Genjutsu mistress said to the redhead. You can never know what is lurking within the shadows of the tree. Naruto looked at the young woman in front of him. She was probably around Kakashi's age. Her eyes were what struck him as curious, but he didn't say anything about them. The redhead just smiled at Kirena and responded. I don't respond to friendly, he said. Kirena raised an eyebrow at that, but she didn't ask what he meant by that. Joining Team 3. Naruto nodded. You the sensei? He asked quietly. His father hadn't bothered telling him the details about his new team. Then again, he probably figured he wouldn't have wanted to know if he was going to meet them soon and introductions were going to be made. Kirena shook her head. I'm not yet Jonin, she said. Naruto seemed slightly surprised that she had yet to become Jonin. Around that age was still at a lower rank. Naruto wouldn't want that. Kakashi became Jonin when he was much younger than this, and Itachi would probably rise above the rank in the next months. Well, since the Uchiha was already in Anbu, one could say he was technically Jonin. The thought made Naruto frown. He was still a mere little genin. It was disturbing knowing that he was reduced to this. It would even be maddening if his teammates are the same people he left in the academy a couple of years ago. He had left the academy because it could no longer accommodate him, but he was still in the same rank. Focusing on the woman once again, Naruto asked. Why? Kirena blinked. Why? That was a question no one asked. Why was she still a chunin? It wasn't like you just woke up one day and say, I want to be Jonin, and they register you as a Jonin. There had to be terms met for one to become Jonin, and abilities had to be that of a Jonin. Why? Why? Kirena repeated the question. Naruto nodded. Why are you not a Jonin? You're already grown up. Just because you're grown doesn't mean that you can become a Jonin. I know that, Naruto said. Years mean time to improve. Well, I guess Itachi was right. Not everyone can grow in the same way as we have, and not everyone has the capability. Everyone is different after all. The red wasn't talking to Kirena by that time. What do you do that requires focus? Kirena looked at Naruto curiously. You saw me earlier, she said. Naruto nodded, but before he could say anything, a loud voice called out, rushing over to the two. Naruto. The redhead frowned for a second. He then smiled. It all happened so fast that Kirena could only blink in surprise. So, "You're my teammate," Naruto said to the boy who had once tried to be a bully in the academy and tried to have his homework stolen so many times. "Who would have thought?" the boy said. "You're buying me lunch today after we finish things. Just to make up for lost time. Missed your homeworks after you left, and I had to find someone to copy from." The boy spoke casually. "Oh, sorry, Kurena-sensei. I got a little excited seeing this guy." "You know him?" The boy nodded. "Classmates at the academy. He left us after a year, but we are still genins," the boy said with a grin. Kurena looked at Naruto once again. The redhead had been busy with military police, and it was strange that he was not allowed to go to the Chunin exams, even though the exams were held each year. There must have been reasons. She didn't know how good he was, but if he was able to leave the academy just after a year and even said to rival Itachi, then he must have been strong. The Uchiha was even far superior to her. Some shinobi do say even though Naruto has not been rising in the ranks, it didn't mean that he had stopped growing. Kakashi was never forthcoming about the redhead's skills. It was all kept a secret. Kakashi had admitted that he didn't actually know everything because Naruto's file was only known to the Hokage, the Sandaime and Fugaku. Kurena was curious. She would stick around to watch. Nothing much was said as the team leader and one more of his students came. The man greeted her warmly and said a few things before asking, "Are you going to join us today?" Kurena shook her head. "I have a mission later on, but I will stay around to watch," she said calmly. The man nodded and looked at his team for a moment. "I'm sure you already know each other since you all were at the academy at one point," the man stated calmly. "In any case, let us begin with introductions. I am Mahiro Takagawa, Donin sensei of this team." "This idiot probably doesn't even remember our names," one of Naruto's teammates said. "Tetsuma," the boy said with a smile. "Remember it well because if you forget it, I will remind you with this," the boy said holding out his fist. "Natsumura," the other boy said, holding out his hand to Naruto with a small smile. "Uzumaki Naruto," the redhead said, smiling his smile taking Natsumura's hand. "A pleasure to meet you." Mahiro looked on for a few moments before shaking his head. He really hoped that this wasn't going to give him trouble. Why did the Yondaime even put the redhead in this team? They were short of a member, but there was nothing special about the team. Naruto would have to carry his teammates during missions. Perhaps that was what the Yondaime was running for. If Naruto is forced to carry his teammates, he will have to care for them and look after them. It would also teach him to lead others and be an example. The Jonin sighed and looked at Kurena for a moment. "We don't know your abilities and as a team we must work together recognizing each other's strengths and weaknesses. Natsu Tetsu, spar with Naruto so that we can see what he is capable of. For someone who has been in military police that shouldn't be a problem, right?" the man said to Naruto with a smile. Naruto shook his head. 2-on-1 is still not fair, the redhead said. "But I guess I have no choice," the redhead said walking over to the field, leaving the tree. His teammates followed him. "I will tell when to stop," the sensei said. "You can start at any time, but nothing lethal. This is just a friendly spar so that you can see what Naruto can do, and so that Naruto can see what you can do." There were always some expectations on him. On his first day at the academy, he was forced to fight the strongest because he was expected to be better than the average as the Yondaime Hokage's house. He had failed to live up to the expectations during that match which ended in humiliation. On this occasion, he was expected to hold his own against two genins, not because he was Minato's son, but because he has been genin the longest, and was in military police force. Would he flop again? "Prepare yourself, Naruto," Tetsu said as he began to charge towards him. Naruto looked at the genin for a few moments. He was slow. Very slow. Perhaps it was because he had grown to see his father flashing around the training ground in speeds he could not follow. The redhead didn't wait for the genin to come at him. Naruto took off towards Tetsu as the distance between them closed. The redhead jumped up into the air and flipped once before he landed behind Tetsu. The genin twisted around to face Naruto. When he was fully turned, he found the redhead staring at him with bored-looking eyes. Tetsu glared. "Sensei," Natsu called out to the watching Jonin. "I think it is safe to say that Naruto-san is capable, and going like this won't do any good. Wouldn't it better if we teamed up against you? This will help our teamwork and so that Naruto-san can learn how formations work and codes before we go to a mission." Although he was not looking at Natsu, Naruto raised an eyebrow and muttered, "Interesting." Mahiro seemed to think about it for a few moments before he nodded. "That seems to be the best option. We will take a D-rank mission afterwards just to test things out," the man stated. Naruto's apartment. "You know, if my father finds out that you brought me food, I will be in trouble, right?" Naruto said to Izumi, who had brought him food. The man had said he would have to take care of himself. He had always been sheltered, and had his needs taken care of by the people around him. Perhaps this was a lesson in life, but it didn't matter much to Naruto if it as a lesson or not. He was just happy to have gained his independence. He had always crazed for this freedom. He could walk around in his space naked, and no one would say anything about it. "I know," Izumi said calmly as he placed the plastic bag on the coffee table. She sat down beside Naruto before speaking again. "This is just takeout. I bought it on my way out knowing that you would be dining with ramen." "What is wrong with that?" Naruto asked. Food was food. As long as he ate and got full, there should be no need to complain about it. Ramen was easier to make anyway. He didn't have to worry about burning it or making it taste like something that came from the sewers. You need to eat some other food to maintain a healthy diet. You won't grow well if ramen is your only intake. So far, you have grown splendidly because I have been making you food that is good for your body, and your training makes sure that you're physically healthy. Naruto tilted his head to the side before shrugging. There are healthy foods in the outside as well. I can't even be picky about what I eat anyway. D-rank payment is rather pathetic. I can't pay my rent with it. What happened to your savings? You were getting paid well at military police, and your mother was giving you an allowance, Izumi said. My rent is a bit too much. Well, that is what you get for renting one of the most expensive properties in Konoha. Since I usually eat out, I spend more on food. Every day is training. So every week I must be getting new clothes. I have weapons to stock and maintaining my sword is rather expensive. These shirts were specifically made for me. More custom jobs that dig holes in my pockets. Izumi smiled. There were a lot of things that Naruto had to cover, and she was sure by end of this month, if he kept doing D-rank missions, he would have exhausted all his savings. He needed to do missions that would pay him enough to survive, especially now that his parents were not going to give him anything. Welcome to the world, adults, Izumi said, still smiling. Your father is probably trying to teach you how to be responsible. You're going to be clan head, and to be honest, you're irresponsible. You're only responsible when it comes to your training. Responsibilities are hard work, Naruto said, with a wave of his right head. I think my father is a sadist though. From catching criminals in the streets to chasing after cats. Naruto said with a frown. This is basically torture, and I'm sure he is enjoying himself. Don't say that, Naruto, Izumi chided with a shake of her head. I actually came because I have a message from Yoshino. She said if she hears that you're doing anything that will shame the clan. If she hears anything, she said she will come here and drag you back to the compound to re-educate you on the manners you have forgotten. Naruto snorted. She never stops trying to control my life, the redhead said. You were her, Naruto said as he stood. It's not like there is something bad that I will be doing anyway. I am going to be busy with missions from next year. I know, Izumi said. The old hag said she would start teaching Karin next year. This will be to prepare her to handle matters of the clan as your sister. There is an agreement that you cannot be full-time at the clan head, then Karin will have to stand in for you. That will also save her from the cruelty of the shinobi world. With being kept in the village handling clan matters, she won't be forced to fight. Her brother will do the fighting for her, Naruto said calmly. A week later. Naruto's apartment. Naruto was preparing his weapons for the mission he had to undertake with his team. His first mission outside the village, and Naruto was happy he was going to be finally going out of the damned village to do a mission as a shinobi. He could not count the time he left with that perverted Sannin. That had been strictly a time away to relax from his training, and all shinobi matters. This was a real mission. Rank didn't matter at this stage. His sword was already prepared, and its sheath had been made so that he could carry it with him at all times when doing missions. Shurikens and kunais were already packed up in the pouch. There was nothing really that was left. With that in mind, the redhead took a storage scroll and sealed everything aside from his sword. He placed the scroll on the nightstand. The mission was for tomorrow morning after all. The redhead looked at the kunai his father gave him. It was for protection. This was his first mission. It wasn't like there would be anyone waiting for them outside ready to ambush them, and Naruto was sure that his defensive jutsu could make sure that he survived an ambush. He was with a jonin, and with his jutsu, there was a chance of survival, and he didn't want to end up losing the kunai on his first mission. It would be careless of him. After sliding the trunk containing his weapons under his bed, Naruto took the three-pronged kunai and placed it on the nightstand before he smiled. Everything was set. If he could just sleep just now and wake up tomorrow morning, he would do it. But it was still noon. There were still a couple of hours left. And he still had a session with his father, which was supposed to be happening in a few moments at Training Ground 44. The redhead decided to leave the apartment for the training ground, but as he was locking the door, Itachi appeared. Going somewhere? Naruto nodded. We are going to test a combo jutsu and do some final runs for my jutsus. Me and my father, Naruto said. You do know that he plans on taking me to a civil war, right? It had come as a surprise, really. Perhaps the man had come to understand that he was a shinobi, and he could not shield him from what the life of a shinobi has to bring. Besides, he couldn't drag other people's children if he was not willing to drag his own child. It would make things easier for him with other shinobi. Naruto understood that he would be doing things that shinobi do on that mission, but that didn't him dread for it. He would wait and see what it will bring. His father was just making sure that he was prepared for everything, that he would not have to be looking over his shoulder when they do reach the battlefield. There would be a lot of opponents to face, and he could not be looking at him at all times. My father told me, Itachi said as walked beside Naruto. The two cut a corner and took the stairs, before he spoke again. Why did your father choose you exactly? There must be more to the reasons, he explained. The Mizukage is a Jinchuriki, Naruto answered calmly. He wants to display the power of the Uzumaki as well. If the Bajor does come out, I will have to hold it down with my chains like my mother to the Kyubi. He can work on suppressing the chakra from the man. I see, Itachi said. Well, that explains a few things. Your father has really put a lot of thought into this. Konoha will not lose anything, and although you will have blood in your hands once again, you will gain something valuable. Well, it was to be expected. The man was also risking a political backlash from this action. Other villages would see this as Konoha trying to extend its land or trying to take over Kiri. It doesn't have to be true to damage Konoha's reputation. Before anything, the man leading Kiri was a legitimate Kage. He may be doing despicable things, but he was still a Kage, and sometimes in politics, the right and wrong didn't really matter. Konoha would be assisting rebels in Kiri. Itachi would also assist them if it was up to him. What was happening in Kiri was truly unacceptable. If he was asked to follow, he would tag along. As much as this would benefit Konoha, it was possible that other villages would discover what Konoha was doing, but they didn't have to worry about being attacked. If an army was being sent to Kiri, it would be a problem, but it was just the Hokage and his son. Still, what would Kumo and Iwa do when they do discover this? I guess for now this has been kept a secret so that other villages do not know about, because if they do, they will be happy to beat Konoha to the punch, Itachi said as the two hit the streets. Are you ready for it? That doesn't have to be answered, Naruto said with a wave of his hands. I have the Chunin exams coming up. That will need my full attention. I will be surrounded by enemies, and will have to be on my toes at all times. Well, I have my jutsu. Itachi shook his head. Don't put your life on it, Naruto. Don't depend too much on it, the Uchiha said firmly. When you start depending on your jutsu, you will grow arrogant and overconfident. One day when you are not able to use it, you will be helpless. My father has taught me that I cannot become too dependent on the Sharingan. Battle drums must not play, and the first thought is my Sharingan. I must know how to fight without it. Naruto looked up for a moment. My father has said something like that, the redhead said in a thoughtful tone. Naruto-kun, two stopped as they were called by a feminine voice. Naruto didn't look back, which caused Itachi to ask, "What is the problem?" He asked, and looked back to see a teenage girl walking towards the two, holding a small basket. Fan of yours? Something like that, Naruto said as he turned around to face the teenager. He smiled as she closed the distance, and stood before the two. Itachi-kun, the teen girl said, smiling at Itachi. The Uchiha merely nodded. I have been looking everywhere for you since you returned. You have not been in the streets. Are you off? Naruto shook his head. I have been relieved of my duties. My colleagues said I was taking the spotlight and the beautiful girls. I was forced to leave the force because of it. The redhead said with a charming smile. The girl giggled warmly. I wouldn't mind if you patrolled the streets even despite not being a member of the military police force, she said smiling. I would be in trouble if I did that, Naruto said. Look at this, he said pointing at Itachi's stoic mask. Imagine 10 more of this with evil intentions. Do you think I would survive? The girl shook her head. They would mess up your pretty face, she said. She paused for a moment and looked between the two boys. I have been going around the village with this. I have not been able to find you, but I'm glad I found you today. You didn't have to do that, princess, Naruto said. You could have just left it at the ramen stand, the redhead said, stretching out his right hand. The girl gave him the basket with a smile. I wanted to give you in person, and I can't really gain entrance into your clan compound, she explained lightly. You should just tell me where you're living. I heard you were living outside of your compound. I can bring it to you. Naruto smiled. I won't be in the village in the next day's missions. We will make new arrangement when I return, the redhead said calmly. As much as I would like to stay in your delightful presence, I have been summoned by the Hokage, and you know when he calls you, you have to go there running. The girl understood and said a few words before rushing away from the two. Naruto turned away, began take the path he had been taking before being stopped. What? He asked Itachi, who was looking at him at the corner of his eyes. What was that all about? I have never seen you act like that. Civilians, you must be gentle with them. During my time with police force, I learned how to interact with people of all kinds. You cannot treat a woman in the same way as you do a man. Why is she giving you food? You know, I live on my own, my father has forbidden Izumi from bringing me food. A girl was willing to cook lunch for me after I saved her from an unfortunate incident and I could not refuse. Besides, it was good eating something other than ramen, the redhead explained lightly. Itachi merely shook his head. Are you going to eat that? Naturally. A girl put all her efforts to cook this, I cannot allow it to go to waste. Besides, it won't be the first time, the redhead said. Times are tough, huh? I mean, we are forced to do missions with high risks, but yet still earn less money. Konoha could not survive. We started charging higher than we do for the missions we are requested to handle. People pay mission fees depending on the level of difficulty. If you're likely to meet bandits, the mission will probably be C-rank mission, and the pay will amount to that much, Itachi said. But because Konoha shinobi are being targeted, C-rank missions become A- rank, and B rank. You will not find a C-rank mission outside the borders of this country. Clients are not forced to bear the weight of this new added difficulty. If they were forced to bear the weight, they would be paying higher fees and would likely turn to other villages, Naruto added. Konoha is forced to keep the rates low even with this difficulty. Being a shinobi is difficult these days. Those not earning enough are turning to odd jobs, while some to crime. Naruto paused for a moment. If things don't change, things will only worsen. I think this is why your father is taking the risk of taking you to Kumagakure and involving the village in Kiri's civil war, Itachi said. Anbu are dealing with the problems though, that is why we have been the busiest. Enemy shinobi have been handled by us, and we have driven most out of the country and near our borders. The two conversed as they made their way towards training ground. It didn't take too long for them to get there, but they did arrive, and when they did, their fathers were already present. Naruto was surprised to see his former superior at the place. That had not been in the plans. Then again, neither was Itachi in the plan. You had us wait, Minato said to Naruto. He raised an eyebrow at the basket Naruto was holding. What is that? My lunch, the redhead said calmly. A delightful girl made it for me, he smiled as he said that. A girl whose name you don't even know, Itachi added, looking the other way. Naruto looked at Itachi. I never said that. The only reason you called her princess is because you don't know her name. I assume since you know your way around girls, you're afraid to ask because it may infuriate her and she will stop giving you lunch, Itachi said. I'd also be insulted. Minato stared at the two and then at Naruto. I didn't know you were becoming like that. But you're cheating our agreement, the Yondaime Hokage said. Naruto shrugged. I'm merely taking advantage of a loophole, the redhead said, placing his food down. You still have work to do, right? Shall we get to it? Minato nodded and motioned for Naruto to come closer to him. The redhead did so before Minato started speaking. Don't forget the crucial part. The element chakra must be balanced at ratio of 2:4. A mistake, and this thing will leave us mortally wounded. I know, Naruto said with a wince. Our clones have already experienced the feeling, and I have already had enough accidents already, Naruto said calmly. Let us, he said. Minato held out his right hand and formed a Rasengan. He held out his left hand, pouring wind chakra into the Rasengan, making it change its form simultaneously. Naruto was holding out both his hands, pouring flames into the jutsu. The jutsu began to take form in the form of a shuriken. It made a screeching sound as the blades spun around. The blades were engulfed by flames as well as its center. The spinning blades released a hot breeze as the two released some sweat, having a hard time concentrating. The form was complete, but when Naruto stopped pouring chakra into the jutsu, Minato cursed as he failed to control it. Shit, the man cursed as he grabbed Naruto and disappeared in a flash of yellow, appearing behind Fugaku. Boom. The jutsu exploded in a mixture of intense flames and powerful gusts of wind that tore through the clearing. The flames formed a large mushroom that rose high above the trees that surrounded them, and the gusts of wind blasted around, causing debris to pick up. The four had to shield their eyes and hold firm to the ground to avoid being blown away by the gusts of wind. It took a few moments for the explosion to die down, but when it did die down, there was nothing but a large crater in the ground and a burnt surrounding. They could still feel the heat generated from the jutsu. Fugaku had slightly wide eyes at what his Sharingan saw. He turned to face father and son with an expressionless look on his face. I see why you wanted the help of the Sharingan, the man said. If you had been caught in that explosion, I don't know what kind of pain you would experience. But it would be a quick death. I don't know whether from the flames or the thousands of blades that would pierce all over your body. But one thing is certain though, if someone gets caught in that, there would not be a shred of their existence left behind. Itachi looked on. He hadn't thought that the two would end up creating something so lethal and so dangerous. I shouldn't be used like the Rasengan, because if you don't lose your hand, you will lose the ability to use chakra with it, Fugaku said. He would rank this as kinjutsu. What sort of jutsu could defend against something like that? There was nothing in Fugaku's opinion. I figured as much, Minato said. We will learn how to hurl it. It shouldn't be that difficult since it has wind. Fugaku nodded. But it takes a lot of chakra. Minato nodded. Too much chakra. 2 is the limit, and that is it. I will have to supplement it with Sage Jutsu. It will give me more stamina and chakra to be able to throw it, the cage said. What went wrong? It became unstable as soon as Naruto stopped adding chakra. You had to balance its form, and given the power, it would be impossible for normal people. Since we don't have Sage Jutsu now, how about we try it differently? I'm open to suggestions. Naruto's control over chakra is exceptional. Both of you have exceptional chakra control, which is why you can pull this off, Fugaku said. But I will be guiding you with the Sharingan until you can get the hang of it. Minato, you create the base of the jutsu and hurl it, the man said, and turned to Naruto. The moment it released, Naruto, you will have to act within seconds. I see what you mean, Minato said. It will be like how we use my wind breakthrough in conjunction with a small version of your fireball, the cage said to Naruto. But you will have to be quick, because you will do it after the jutsu is released. Naruto appeared to think for a few moments. You do understand that I will have to consider the rotation of your jutsu, and release gentle flames will be consumed by the rotation of the jutsu. I must know when to stop, because if I don't it will explode. I must also be running behind the jutsu as I do this. You make it sound a little difficult, but you don't have problems with releasing your katan, Minato said. Naruto sighed. You only gave try left for the day, the redhead said to his father. I can still go on since I don't have to use as much chakra as you. I know, Minato said with a nod. So we will have to make this count. Naruto nodded. Let us do this, he said. Before you go, Itachi started. This isn't something that can be used when you still have many opponents to face, the Uchiha said. What about Naruto's jutsu? He was only to come up with a ball of flames, and so we came up with the idea to fuse both our elements into one jutsu to create this jutsu. But my son has created something as well. It is S-ranked as well. Both Uchias looked at Naruto. The redhead merely smiled. We do it after we try this. It is quite taxing, so this will have to come first. The Uzumaki said as he walked into the distance along with his father. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out the other playlist. Hope you would like them too.